Imagine standing on the edge of a cliff with a choice to make, a decision that could change the course of your life. Your mind races, weighing pros and cons, replaying past experiences, imagining future outcomes. But amidst all this noise, there's a quiet, steady feeling deep inside you. It's subtle, almost whispering, yet it feels powerful. This is your intuition, a kind of wisdom that doesn't come from experience or intellect. It's a sense of knowing that defies logic. In this video, we'll embark on a journey to explore the essence of intuition as explained in Intuition, Knowing Beyond Logic. We'll uncover how intuition differs from logical thought, how it emerges from a state of presence, and how you can nurture it in your own life. Stick with us till the end. What we're about to share might just change the way you make decisions forever. Section 1. Maps. Within each of us lies a fascinating interplay of three fundamental forces: instinct, intuition, and intellect. These forces work together, each with its own purpose, creating the map of our internal world. Imagine instinct as the wisdom of the body, guiding us toward survival. It acts without thought, purely reactive, driven by deep-seated impulses that ensure our physical well-being. On the other end of the spectrum, there is intuition, the subtle voice of the soul. Intuition arises from the heart, giving us insight and creativity that are beyond logical understanding. And in between these two forces lies the intellect or mind, which serves as an intermediary but is based solely on knowledge, not spontaneity. These three forces, instinct, intuition, and intellect, hold the key to understanding ourselves and finding balance within. When the body operates on its own, in a fully spontaneous way, we call it instinct. Instinct is ancient, rooted in survival and driven by primal urges that ensure we stay alive and functional. Without us having to think about it, instinct manages everything that keeps our body going, from breathing to heartbeat to the countless chemical reactions happening in each cell. If you consider how complex these processes are, you'll realize that instinct is a kind of intelligence all its own, a silent wisdom that knows exactly what to do without conscious thought. Imagine if we had to think about each breath or manually control our heartbeat. Life would be impossible. Instinct, in its quiet, steady way, handles it all, ensuring our survival. On the other hand, when the soul operates spontaneously, we call it intuition. Intuition is not concerned with survival. It seeks something higher, something deeper. It's a whisper from the heart that leads us toward creativity, compassion, and insight. Through intuition, we feel drawn to create art, to love, to explore beauty, to dream, and to connect with others on a profound level. Intuition goes beyond words, beyond logic. It's a feeling that emerges from within, guiding us in a way that intellect cannot comprehend. Intuition is our bridge to inspiration and spiritual insight, helping us connect with what gives life true meaning. While instinct protects the body, intuition nurtures the soul. Between these two, we find the intellect or the mind. The intellect doesn't act spontaneously. It relies on accumulated knowledge and thought. Unlike instinct or intuition, the intellect isn't natural in its function. It is learned, developed through experience, language, and study. Intellect analyzes, questions, reasons, and theorizes, drawing upon what it knows to make sense of the world. But intellect is bound by logic and can never truly reach beyond it. It creates theories, forms ideas, and builds complex systems of thought, yet it lacks the spontaneity of instinct and the depth of intuition. Intellect serves a practical purpose, helping us navigate the world, but it alone cannot offer us wisdom or insight into the mysteries of life. Chapter 1. Head, Heart, and Being. To gain a clearer understanding of these inner forces, let's think of ourselves as having three main centers of awareness: the head, the heart, and being itself. The head represents the intellect or mind, where all our thoughts and analyses reside. It's the place of logic and language, where we analyze, question, and try to understand the world. The heart, on the other hand, is the center of intuition. It's where we feel love, joy, sorrow, and compassion, guiding us through emotions and deeper connections. Beyond both the head and the heart lies our being, our innermost core, the pure awareness that silently observes everything within us, while the head and heart act, being simply witnesses. The head, or intellect, is the center of thought. Here the mind is constantly busy, processing information, trying to understand and make sense of everything. Intellect is logical and methodical, using language and reasoning to analyze and organize our experiences. But the intellect is also prone to overthinking. Thousands of years of philosophical thought have shown us that the mind can endlessly create questions, debates, and theories without ever reaching a final truth. The head is powerful in its ability to think and plan, but it can also become trapped in its own web of words, never arriving at true understanding. The intellect's strength lies in its ability to solve practical problems, yet it falls short when it comes to matters of the heart and spirit. Then there is the heart, which we can think of as the home of intuition. While the intellect focuses on logic, the heart speaks the language of feeling, beyond words and reason. The heart guides us toward beauty, love, and connection, opening us up to experiences that defy logical explanation. Through intuition, the heart can sense things that the mind cannot grasp. When we feel inspired, when we are drawn to create, or when we experience deep empathy for others, it's the heart at work. Intuition is subtle and gentle, but incredibly powerful. It guides us toward what makes life meaningful, toward art, beauty, friendship, and love. Yet, in a world dominated by intellect, we often ignore the heart's wisdom. And finally, there is being itself, our pure, essential nature, beyond thought or feeling. Being is the silent witness within us, an awareness that simply observes, untouched by the constant activity of the head and heart. It doesn't analyze, question, or even feel. It is a state of pure consciousness, present in the background of all our experiences. When we experience moments of deep peace or clarity, it's often a glimpse of this pure awareness, our being. In those moments, we are not thinking or feeling. We are simply present, awake to the reality of the moment. Being is the source of our true self, beyond all thoughts, emotions, or actions. Each part of ourselves, the head, the heart, and being, serves a unique and important purpose. The intellect or head is essential for practical life. It handles daily tasks, organizes information, and helps us navigate the external world. Through intellect, we build structures, invent technology, and make sense of physical reality. But intellect by itself is blind to meaning. It can lead us to great discoveries, yet it can also lead to destruction if left unchecked. Without the guidance of intuition or the balance of instinct, intellect alone can become dangerous, as seen in the development of weapons or harmful technology. The intellect is a powerful tool, but it needs to be balanced by the wisdom of the heart and the grounded stability of instinct. In society, however, we've come to prioritize intellect above all else. Education systems train us to think critically and logically, often at the expense of emotional and intuitive understanding. From a young age, we are encouraged to develop the mind, while the heart and intuition are neglected. This emphasis on intellect has led us to create a world that values science, technology, and reason, but often overlooks the importance of creativity, empathy, and connection. We are trained to think with our heads, but rarely are we taught to feel with our hearts. In doing so, we have lost touch with the deeper, intuitive wisdom that the heart offers. Meanwhile, the heart, which is home to our emotions and intuition, speaks a language the intellect cannot fully understand. It knows love, beauty, and connection, none of which can be quantified or fully explained. The heart inspires us to create, to love, to connect, and to find meaning beyond the material world. Yet, in a world dominated by intellect, the heart's wisdom is often ignored or undervalued. We may see artists, poets, and musicians as impractical or even irrational. Society doesn't value these intuitive qualities in the same way it values intellect, and so the heart is often left in the background, its wisdom unheard. A truly wise person finds a way to balance these three forces: instinct, intellect, and intuition. When the head, the heart, and being work together in harmony, they create a kind of inner symphony. Each part supports the other, creating a sense of wholeness and balance. Instinct takes care of the body, intellect handles the mind's needs, and intuition guides us toward deeper fulfillment. In this harmony, we move closer to our being, our innermost self, where pure awareness resides. In that state, we experience a profound sense of peace and joy, a kind of inner ecstasy that is rare but deeply fulfilling. In the end, I am not against intellect or any part of ourselves. I only suggest that intellect be put in its proper place as a servant, not a master. When intellect serves, it enhances our lives in countless ways, but when it takes over, it leads us away from harmony. In finding balance among the head, the heart, and the body, we begin to uncover the truth of our being and connect with the deeper wisdom within us. Let us learn to honor all parts of ourselves, allowing instinct, intellect, and intuition to guide us toward wholeness. Imagine trying to solve a complex puzzle. If you approach it purely from the head, you might get stuck in overthinking. If you approach it purely from the heart, you might get overwhelmed by frustration. But when you engage your being, a quiet clarity emerges, allowing the solution to reveal itself without force. This is the power of aligning the head, heart, and being. Understanding this harmony within ourselves is just the beginning. To tap into intuition, we also need to understand how our relationship with time, specifically the past, present, and future, affects our inner knowing. Chapter 2: Past, Present, and Future. To truly grasp the nature of our inner faculties, instinct, intellect, and intuition, we must understand their connection to the past, present, and future. Instinct is our inherited wisdom from our distant animal past. This primal intelligence is deeply ingrained, developed over countless evolutionary stages, and it governs essential functions that we don't consciously control. Instinct is reliable and ancient, ensuring survival through mechanisms like breathing, heartbeat, and reflexes. These processes, which we often take for granted, operate with an accuracy that science still struggles to replicate. Without thought or interference, they allow our bodies to function seamlessly, illustrating the silent power of instinct, which has sustained life across millennia. Moving to the present, intellect represents humanity's current stage of evolution. It is the tool of reasoning, analysis, and critical thinking, helping us navigate the complexities of modern life. Intellect builds the foundations of science, business, politics, and philosophy, enabling us to engage with ideas, solve problems, and shape society. Yet, despite its usefulness, intellect is fallible and still in a phase of growth. Unlike the ancient certainty of instinct, intellect often wavers, relying on beliefs, theories, and ideologies to fill its gaps. This reliance on constructs creates rigidity, causing people to cling to established beliefs even when faced with new or contradictory information. Consequently, intellect becomes a double-edged sword. While it offers structure and solutions, it can also lead us into mental traps, where we view life through narrow lenses. Intellect, though powerful, is limited in scope. It often creates the problems it seeks to solve, becoming entangled in contradictions. For example, science, as a product of intellect, offers advancements that improve life, yet simultaneously produces technologies that can threaten our existence. This dual nature highlights intellect's instability and inability to access the deeper truths of existence. Unlike instinct, which acts in perfect harmony with nature, intellect lacks that inherent guidance. It relies on memory and learned information, often clinging to outdated solutions, leading to prejudice and judgment. Instead of offering clarity, intellect can create anxiety, confusion, and a sense of detachment, leaving us isolated from a more profound connection to life. Beyond intellect lies intuition, a faculty that represents humanity's potential future. Intuition is not something learned or acquired. It is an innate insight that transcends logic, emerging from within when we are in a state of pure awareness. Intuition connects us to the essence of existence, offering direct understanding without the need for analysis. This deep knowing arises effortlessly, providing clarity and peace that intellect alone cannot achieve. Through practices like meditation, we can access this intuitive wisdom, allowing it to guide our lives. Unlike intellect, which divides, questions, and judges, intuition unifies, revealing the interconnectedness of all things. It is through intuition that we access a state of harmony and insight, aligning with the greater flow of the universe. Instinct and intuition function in perfect balance, each operating in its respective realm. Instinct governs the physical, ensuring survival, while intuition governs the spiritual, offering meaning and purpose. The intellect, positioned between them, serves as a bridge, yet many mistakenly make it their destination. People often become trapped in intellect, believing it is the highest form of understanding, when it is merely a tool meant to guide us from instinct to intuition. To live fully, one must recognize intellect's role as a passage and not an end, using it wisely to connect with deeper insights rather than becoming ensnared by its limitations. Only then can we move from mere survival to truly thriving, living with purpose and clarity. Science, which embodies intellect's achievements, provides us with tremendous power, but also reveals its limitations. Without the balance of intuition, intellect becomes hazardous, as seen in the potential for misuse of technology and environmental degradation. Humanity now possesses tools capable of global destruction, yet lacks the wisdom to wield them responsibly. Intellect, without intuition's guidance, can lead to disastrous consequences, driven by ambition without foresight. Intuition, on the other hand, cultivates wisdom and compassion, qualities essential for a balanced and enlightened life. It helps us harness intellect's gifts for the greater good, guiding us toward choices that enhance life rather than threaten it. The struggle we face today is largely due to a lack of intuition. Caught within intellect's confines, humanity experiences a growing sense of emptiness, restlessness, and dissatisfaction. Intellect continually creates questions but offers no lasting solutions. We find ourselves in a cycle of consumption, distraction, and endless pursuit, seeking fulfillment in external achievements yet feeling increasingly hollow. In contrast, intuition offers an answer that intellect cannot, an inner peace that requires no external validation, a fulfillment that is self-sustaining. When we connect to intuition, life becomes a celebration rather than a burden. We experience joy, creativity, and a profound sense of belonging in the universe. This disconnect from intuition has also led to the rigidity of religious and cultural dogmas that further entrench people within the limits of intellect. Traditional beliefs encourage us to suppress our instincts, casting them as inferior or sinful. In doing so, society creates a conflict within us, dividing our natural desires from our spiritual aspirations. Religion, rather than guiding us to intuition, often strengthens the hold of intellect, promoting guilt and repression. If we could embrace instinct without shame and nurture intuition without fear, we would find ourselves living in harmony, free from the inner conflicts that hold us back. By allowing instinct and intuition to flourish, intellect can finally fulfill its intended purpose to bridge the gap between body and spirit, past and future. In the end, understanding instinct, intellect, and intuition allows us to appreciate the full spectrum of human experience. Instinct connects us to our roots, grounding us in survival and the wisdom of the body. Intellect serves as our guide through the complexities of the modern world, offering logic and order, but often creating more questions than answers. Intuition, however, provides us with a vision of what we can become, connecting us to the eternal, to wisdom that transcends words and reason. By harmonizing these three aspects of ourselves, we can live a balanced, enlightened life, moving beyond mere survival and intellect's limitations to a state of true understanding and fulfillment. It is this journey, from instinct through intellect to intuition, that leads to wholeness, inner peace, and a life of joyful purpose. Imagine you're a painter, standing in front of a blank canvas. If you're thinking about past mistakes or worrying about how others will judge your work, you won't paint with freedom. But when you let go, trusting the present moment, your creativity flows effortlessly. This is the essence of living in the present and the key to unlocking intuition. Living in the present requires inner awareness, which brings us to the concept of the 3 rungs of a ladder, each rung representing a deeper level of awareness. Chapter 3. 3 rungs of a ladder: instinct, intellect, and intuition. When we talk about the path to higher consciousness, imagine it as climbing a ladder, where each rung represents a stage of awareness. There are 3 essential rungs: instinct, intellect, and intuition. These 3 qualities aren't things you learn from outside. They are already embedded in you. They are inborn, natural qualities that are part of your essence. You don't have to be taught how to feel hunger, how to react in danger, or how to think critically. These capabilities are yours from birth. It's only when you begin to pay attention to them that you start to see their profound impact on how you experience the world. Let's dive deeper into each rung of this ladder and explore how they shape your life. Instinct, the root of our being. Instinct is the foundational rung of the ladder, the most basic level of consciousness that we share with all living creatures. It's what connects us to the animal kingdom, guiding us in survival and reproduction. Just think about how a lioness will fiercely protect her cubs, not out of love or emotion, but because it's ingrained in her biology to ensure the survival of her young. Instinct is raw and primal. It's not shaped by culture or intellect. It just is. Every living being operates on these instinctual patterns that have been built into the very fabric of life over millions of years. One of the core examples Osho often used to explain the power of instinct is the story of a deer in the wild. When a deer is grazing peacefully in the forest, it doesn't need to think about the dangers lurking nearby. It is driven by instinct. When the wind shifts or a subtle change in the environment occurs, the deer immediately senses danger and reacts. The instinct to flee or freeze kicks in without the need for intellectual analysis. Similarly, the way we react to dangerous situations, whether physical, emotional, or psychological, is driven by a primal sense of survival. But what about us, humans? We too are ruled by instinct, though we often don't recognize it. Take the example of human sexuality. At its core, it's a biological impulse, a drive to reproduce and continue the species. Yet we have transformed this basic drive into something far more complex, even romanticized it with layers of emotions, cultural practices, and spiritual beliefs. When you strip away the narratives we've attached to it, sex is simply a biological function, not unlike how a flower blooms to ensure its pollination. Understanding this isn't meant to diminish the experience, but to show that instincts drive a lot of what we do, even if we don't always acknowledge it. Our attachments and the way we form relationships often stem from instinct too. It's not uncommon to fall in love with someone who fits a certain evolutionary role, like health, strength, or fertility. These are attributes tied to survival instincts, but we mask them with labels of love, partnership, or soul connection. Think about the way some animals form lifelong bonds with mates. While we might call it true love, these bonds are often based on a biological urge to secure a safe environment for raising offspring. Understanding the role of instinct in our relationships can help us untangle the deeper motivations behind our emotions and actions. Even our daily behaviors, like eating, sleeping, and protecting ourselves, are all governed by instinct. These actions occur without the need for intellectual analysis or moral reasoning. A bird doesn't decide it's time to migrate based on logic. It does so because of an innate drive that compels it to move with the seasons. Similarly, humans don't think deeply about the need to sleep or eat. It's automatic. Instincts, in their purest form, help us survive and thrive in the world. They act as a silent, guiding force that is often overlooked in favor of more intellectual pursuits. But they remain deeply ingrained in us, directing much of what we do without us even realizing it. The power of the gut feeling is another example of instinct at work. This gut feeling often arises in moments when your intellect hasn't had time to process the situation. Osho tells a story of a man who was about to board a plane and suddenly felt a strong unease. Though everything seemed fine, his instinct told him not to board the flight. He listened, and the plane ended up crashing. His gut feeling in that moment saved his life. This example highlights that instinct, though sometimes dismissed as mere superstition, is a powerful tool that can guide us beyond what we consciously understand. Instinct also manifests in our decision-making process. Think of those moments when you feel a gut feeling that something isn't right. Your mind might not be able to explain it, but your body's instinct is signaling to you. For example, you might be in a room full of people and feel uneasy, even if there is no outward sign of danger. It's your primal instincts alerting you to something that your intellect hasn't processed yet. The feeling could be a result of subtle body language, a shift in energy, or past experiences that your subconscious has picked up on. This ability to sense things beyond our immediate perception is often dismissed in favor of logic, but it's a powerful tool that can guide us through life. This is why, when making major life decisions, Many people often turn to their gut rather than overanalyzing with their intellect. It's a reminder that instinct is deeply attuned to the present moment, even when our intellect is caught up in future worries or past regrets. The key is learning to trust this natural instinct and to recognize that it's not a flaw, but a powerful tool for navigating the world. Intellect, the power of the mind. Once we start thinking, reasoning, and analyzing, we step onto the second rung of the ladder. Intellect. Intellect is what sets humans apart from the rest of the animal kingdom. It's the ability to reason, question, and understand. It allows us to create technology, build societies, and even ponder existential questions. But just because intellect can give us the tools to shape the world, it doesn't mean it always leads us to truth. Intellect is incredibly powerful, but it is often limited. Many of us use only a fraction of our intellectual capacity, and in doing so, we limit our potential to solve deeper problems or understand our true nature. Take the story of a mathematician, as Osho once recounted, who spent years proving a mathematical theory. With the intellectual drive to succeed, he studied endlessly, all the while ignoring his own inner needs and instincts. His intellect gave him a sharp ability to solve equations and define abstract concepts, but at the cost of his emotional well-being. One day, while walking in nature, he experienced a sudden moment of calm. It was then that he realized the answers he sought could not be reached by intellect alone. They required a deeper sense of integration between his mind, body, and soul. The mathematician's journey revealed that intellect, while brilliant, must work in harmony with the other faculties for true understanding. Consider how the average person uses only about 15% of their intellectual potential. Think of all the untapped power just waiting to be accessed. But that requires effort and dedication. Even the greatest minds, like Einstein, operated within this limited framework. We might be able to analyze, reason, and solve complex equations, but even the most brilliant intellects don't have access to the totality of our cognitive abilities. This limitation of intellect reveals how much remains unexplored within us, and how often we rely on intellect alone to answer questions that go beyond its reach. Intellect, while vital, is also heavily influenced by external conditioning, by culture, society, and education. In many ways, schools and universities focus on sharpening the intellect without nurturing a holistic understanding of our existence. We're taught facts, figures, and logic, but seldom are we taught how to connect those intellectual tools to our deeper, more intuitive knowing. This is why, even with all the knowledge we accumulate, we still face inner conflict. Our intellectual prowess often goes against our more instinctive drives, creating an inner turmoil that most people don't know how to resolve. For instance, society tells us to pursue success and wealth, but our inner instincts may crave simplicity and connection instead. This divide between intellect and instinct can be seen in the way we treat basic human desires. Take something like food. Intellect tells us to follow a diet, count calories, and adhere to certain health trends. But instinct often drives us to eat when we're hungry, without considering the logic behind every bite. The conflict between these two forces creates friction. We've all experienced it. After a long day of sticking to a strict eating plan, we suddenly crave a chocolate bar or a burger. The intellect says no, but the body instinctively yearns for what it desires. This inner struggle between intellect and instinct is a common part of human life and shows us the limitations of relying solely on our intellectual understanding of the world. Moreover, intellect often seeks to control and define, which can cause us to miss out on the deeper, unexplainable aspects of life. Intellect is wonderful for organizing and structuring our world, but it's often incapable of grasping the things that don't fit into neat categories. Love, for example, cannot be fully explained by logic. You can't measure love or quantify it, yet it is one of the most profound and meaningful experiences we can have. The intellectual mind wants everything to be logical and predictable, but life, in its essence, is anything but that. Intellect can tell us how to build a bridge, but it can't explain why the beauty of a sunset moves us to tears. Intuition, the voice of the soul. When we reach the third and highest rung of the ladder, we enter the realm of intuition. Intuition is the deep, instinctive knowing that transcends both intellect and instinct. It's an immediate insight or understanding that doesn't require reasoning or thought. You may have experienced moments where you just knew something was true, even though there was no logical or intellectual basis for it. This is intuition at work. It's not something you can develop through intellectual effort or by following instincts. It's a natural state of being that arises when you've transcended the inner conflict between intellect and instinct. Intuition doesn't require you to think about it. It simply happens. Think about moments when you made a decision that felt right, but didn't make logical sense at the time. You might have taken a risk or followed a hunch, and it paid off in ways you couldn't have predicted. That's intuition, knowing without knowing. It's the wisdom that comes when you've quieted the noise of intellectual thought and allowed yourself to tap into a deeper consciousness that sees beyond the obvious. Intuition operates on a completely different level than intellect. It is instantaneous and profound, offering insights that logic could never explain. Consider the story of famous inventor Nikola Tesla. Tesla often spoke about how his greatest ideas came to him through flashes of intuition, not through logical thinking or reasoning. He would see his inventions in his mind before they were created in reality. Tesla's ability to access his intuitive mind allowed him to innovate in ways that others could not even imagine. His work with alternating current and the invention of the Tesla coil were the results of these intuitive insights, and they changed the world. His story reminds us that the intellect, while valuable, cannot always explain the breakthroughs that change history. When you start to access your intuitive abilities, you begin to experience a sense of clarity that is not clouded by doubt or overthinking. It's like an inner voice that guides you toward your highest good. Intuition shows you the path without the need for analysis. It's like a seed of wisdom that has always been there, waiting for you to recognize it. The challenge is not to create intuition, but to make space for it, to clear away the layers of doubt, fear, and overthinking that block its natural flow. Intuition is always available to you. It's simply a matter of tuning into it. Ultimately, intuition allows you to live in a state of freedom, where your decisions are guided by wisdom rather than fear or intellectual calculations. It is the natural expression of a mind at peace with itself, fully integrated with both intellect and instinct. When you live intuitively, you don't need to force things or manipulate circumstances. You simply trust the flow of life and allow your inner wisdom to guide you. Intuition is the pinnacle of awareness, where you act with full knowledge and understanding, beyond the limitations of logic or instinct. It is here that true freedom lies, living not by the rules of society or the desires of the body, but by the deep, unshakable knowledge of your true self. Climbing each rung of this ladder is essential for developing true intuition. The journey begins with self-awareness, but ultimately leads to a sense of oneness with all that exists. At the top of the ladder, we experience life not as a separate individual, but as part of a larger, interconnected whole. This awareness brings a profound sense of peace and clarity, allowing us to live intuitively, guided by a wisdom that transcends personal desires and fears. Consider Maya, a psychologist on a journey of self-discovery. At first, she focuses solely on herself, her thoughts, her emotions, her patterns. She becomes aware of her strengths and weaknesses, understanding her internal landscape. This is the first rung of the ladder, awareness of self. As she climbs higher, she starts to notice others more deeply, seeing how they mirror her own experiences and struggles. This is the second rung, awareness of others. Finally, she reaches a place where she feels a connection with all life, as if her individual identity dissolves into a larger whole. This is the third rung, awareness of existence. Imagine a river flowing effortlessly through a valley. When we reach the top rung of awareness, we become like that river, moving in harmony with life, unburdened by the need to control or resist. This is the state where intuition becomes a natural, effortless part of our existence. Section 2. Barriers to knowing. To truly understand the depth of life, one must embrace the stillness within. This is not just any silence, but a profound silence that allows the inner voice to be heard. Knowing arises only when the mind is quieted and the noise of thoughts recedes. It is only in peace, when the mind is not agitated, that we open the door to true understanding. This kind of knowing comes not from intellectual effort, but from an experience of unity. In this space, you do not grasp life through forceful comprehension. Instead, you merge with it, becoming one with it. This merging is the essence of knowing, a knowing that is alive, experiential, and free of the mind's interference. When you reach this state, you realize that knowing is not something to be acquired. It is something to be experienced, to be lived. Only in this moment of surrender, when your mind is still, can the truth of life reveal itself. Chapter 1. Knowledge. What is the difference between knowledge and knowing? The dictionary might present them as synonyms, but their essence is vastly different. Knowledge is an accumulation of information, a mental construct, whereas knowing is an internal experience. Knowledge is learned, it comes from external sources, and it is often shaped by others' perceptions. You can acquire knowledge about light without ever having seen it, but this does not equate to truly knowing what light is. To truly know, you must experience it directly. Knowing is an intimate personal experience, direct and unmediated. It is the difference between hearing about a sunset and witnessing it with your own eyes. Knowledge, on the other hand, can feel like a mere collection of facts, disconnected from the depth of lived experience. It is impersonal and often detached, leading us to view the world through a lens of separation. This barrier of knowledge can even become a disease, a barrier that keeps us distant from the fullness of life. When we label things, we separate ourselves from them. Take, for example, the simple experience of encountering a wildflower in the mountains. When you see it without any labels, without knowing what it is, you are fully present in the moment. There is no barrier between you and the flower. You are simply observing, feeling, experiencing. This is a moment of pure connection. But the moment you name that flower, a rose, a daisy, or a marigold, you lose something. The label creates a divide, separating you from the flower's essence. You cease to experience it directly. Instead, you engage with the concept of the flower, and this creates distance. Knowledge, therefore, has the potential to diminish the richness of life. It can be a veil, hiding the truth behind concepts and ideas. The same is true for relationships. When you fall in love, in the beginning, there is no knowledge. There are no labels, no judgments, only wonder, pure emotion, and connection. You are united with the other person in an intimate, unspoken bond. But as you get to know each other, the labels, images, and judgments begin to form. The mystery fades, and the experience becomes defined by what you know, not by what you feel. In the beginning, there is no separation. Love flows freely. But as knowledge creeps in, it creates gaps, causing you to lose the fluidity and depth of the original experience. The same dynamic plays out in every area of life. Knowledge creates separation, while knowing creates unity. This is the essence of meditation, the state of not knowing, where you are open, undistracted, and free of preconceptions. Meditation, as Osho teaches, is the practice of suspending knowledge and entering the realm of pure experience. It is the space where thoughts dissolve, where the mind quiets, and where one becomes receptive to the truth of the moment. This is why meditation is not about collecting new information or adding more knowledge. It is about removing the clutter of thoughts and mental concepts. When you meditate, you create space for the truth to emerge naturally, without interference from the mind. The biblical story of man's fall after consuming the fruit of knowledge speaks to this fundamental truth. At first glance, this may seem illogical, for logic itself is rooted in knowledge. Yet the story reveals a deep insight. Knowledge separates us from the whole, while ignorance allows us to experience life directly. The fall from grace in this sense represents the loss of connection with the totality of existence, a separation brought about by the acquisition of knowledge. The danger of knowledge, separation. The more knowledge you acquire, the greater the distance between you and the world. Knowledge has a way of fragmenting reality, of breaking it down into pieces that can be understood but not fully experienced. The more you know, the less you see, because knowledge creates a lens through which you view the world. It narrows your perspective, making it harder to experience life as it truly is. This is why Osho suggests that only children can enter the kingdom of heaven. Children do not approach life with preconceived notions. They observe with pure wonder, free from judgment or analysis. In their innocence, they experience life directly, without the filters that knowledge imposes. Adults, on the other hand, are burdened by the weight of their knowledge, their assumptions, and their projections. As a result, they see only fragments of reality, never the whole. The role of silence in knowing. True insight cannot be reached through thinking. It comes in the silence between thoughts, in the gaps that occur when the mind is still. Knowledge seeks to analyze, to dissect, to understand, but true knowing happens effortlessly in the absence of thought. When you are truly present, when your mind is quiet, you experience reality without the need to label or interpret. Insight does not require effort. It arises naturally when you are open, receptive, and fully attuned to the present moment. The moment you think you know something, mystery begins to fade. The more you grasp for knowledge, the more elusive the truth becomes. But when you allow yourself to simply be, when you let go of the need to control or define, truth emerges effortlessly. The importance of presence in gaining insight. Insight emerges not through mental effort, but through presence. It happens when you let go of the need to understand and simply experience. The more you try to grasp at knowledge, the more distant the truth becomes. But when you approach life with an open heart and a quiet mind, you begin to see things as they are. This is the essence of meditation: to quiet the mind, to empty it of all concepts, and to allow life to reveal itself. When you listen with the intent to experience, not to understand. Don't analyze the words you hear or seek to categorize them. Instead, let them resonate with you deeply, without interference from the mind. This is the true nature of insight: effortless, direct, and profound. The final truth, the gap between thoughts. The final truth is that insight comes in the gap between thoughts. It is the stillness, the space where you are no longer identified with your mind or your knowledge. In these moments of emptiness, the divine enters. Thought cannot grasp it, but in silence, truth flows freely. This is the essence of meditation: to quiet the mind, to empty it of all content, and to allow truth to emerge naturally. Insight does not come through striving, but through being. It is in the moments of non-thought that you connect with the deepest truth of existence, a truth that is beyond all concepts and labels. In conclusion, true knowing comes not through the accumulation of knowledge, but through the experience of life itself. Knowledge separates us from the world. It creates a veil that obscures the richness of existence. The more we know, the less we see. But when we let go of knowledge and embrace the silence within, we open ourselves to a deeper truth. This is the essence of meditation and the key to understanding life. True insight arises naturally when we let go of our need to control, categorize, and define. When we embrace the mystery of life, we enter into a direct experience of reality, one that is rich, profound, and alive. Only through stillness, silence, and surrender can we access the truth of existence. Consider the story of the mystic who, upon encountering the beauty of a sunset, did not name or label it, but simply observed it in its entirety. He did not need to know the name of the colors or the science behind the light. He simply experienced it with full presence. In that moment, he became one with the sunset, free from the constraints of knowledge. Another story is that of a young child who looks at a flower with pure wonder, untouched by any preconceived notions. The child does not know what the flower is, but in that innocence, the child experiences its beauty in its most authentic form. These stories remind us that true knowledge is not a product of the mind. It is an experience of the present moment. When we let go of knowledge and approach life with wonder and presence, we reconnect with the essence of reality itself. To access intuition, we must be willing to let go of this attachment to knowledge. This doesn't mean we discard learning or intelligence. Rather, we hold our knowledge lightly, with a sense of humility. We become open to the mystery of life, recognizing that some truths cannot be explained or understood intellectually. Chapter 2. Intellect. Let's start with a common misconception: intellect. I'm not here to completely disregard intellect. It's a remarkable tool with powerful uses, especially when used consciously. But here's the thing. Intellect is only truly valuable when we recognize its limitations. Imagine you're a scientist, perhaps deep in research or intricate analysis. In those situations, intellect is your most valuable tool, guiding you through logical steps and critical thinking. But it's beautiful only when it stays in its place, as a servant, not a master. Once intellect starts dictating everything, it overreaches its purpose, creating chaos instead of clarity. The problem most of us face is that we let our minds take control, allowing intellect to become the ruler of our thoughts and actions. Have you noticed? The mind doesn't listen to you. It works almost on autopilot. It races ahead, analyzing, planning, worrying, and even criticizing. Day and night, it runs endlessly, even when we're sleeping, unable to take a break. This mental chatter has become so ingrained in our lives that it forgets its role as just a tool. We don't realize that it's meant to support us, not rule us. Think about it. When you go for a walk, you consciously use your legs, but when you sit down, do you keep moving them? No, they rest. Yet our minds seem to never stop moving, always churning, even when there's no real need. In this moment, as I speak to you, I'm using my mind, my intellect. But the moment I stop speaking, I allow my mind to rest, to naturally fall into silence. This pause, this quiet is natural and necessary. However, for most people, the mind keeps racing, churning through thoughts and unresolved issues long after they're relevant. It's as though it's constantly doing overtime work, grappling with unfinished thoughts, anxieties, and countless distractions. Our minds become cluttered, not just with daily concerns, but with the incessant hum of thoughts that should have been put to rest. This brings me to an even deeper issue, our fragmentation. When our intellect dominates, we become scattered, split into pieces rather than unified as a whole. The mind pulls us in, countless directions, and as it does, our hearts and bodies follow suit. You're not just one person. You're fragmented, constantly torn between various desires, thoughts, and fears. It's as if you're many people at once, each with conflicting goals and emotions. Instead of being a harmonious orchestra, your mind becomes a cacophony, a disjointed chorus of conflicting voices and intentions. Let me be clear. Intellect has its place, of course. It's invaluable when it's in the right role, working to solve problems, communicate ideas, or navigate complex situations. But when intellect oversteps its boundaries, it can cause significant turmoil. It's much like your head, perfectly suited to be on your shoulders, but it wouldn't be useful anywhere else. We need intellect for certain tasks, whether that's conducting scientific research, managing affairs in the marketplace, or engaging in logical communication. But there are areas where intellect simply doesn't belong, where it becomes a hindrance rather than a help. And that's where intuition comes in. Intuition is more than just a fleeting feeling or a vague impulse. It's a profound knowing, a type of understanding that goes beyond analysis or data. While intellect is useful for structured thinking, it has inherent limitations. Intuition, on the other hand, has no such boundaries. It's the spark that ignites creativity and brings us closer to truths that intellect alone cannot reach. Intuition is the deeper wisdom that guides you when logic falters, showing you the way when facts fall short and answers seem elusive. I remember an encounter with a high court judge in Calcutta, a man of formidable intellect. His wife confided in me that he was a judge all the time, not just in the courtroom, but at home, with his family, and even in the most private moments. He never stopped judging, carrying his judicial mindset into every aspect of his life. He expected his wife and children to address him as Your Honor, even within the household. Can you imagine the atmosphere? It was one of constant tension and fear. This is the danger of intellect when it oversteps. When it becomes your identity, it colors every interaction and environment, even where it doesn't belong. Your intellect, valuable as it is, must be kept in its place. When you're in a business meeting, it serves a clear purpose. When you're in a creative or spiritual space, it has a supporting role. But when intellect starts to control all areas of your life, you lose touch with something essential. Your true intelligence. True intelligence comes from knowing when to silence the intellect and allow intuition to lead. It's the ability to discern when to rely on reason and when to listen to the deeper, quieter voice within. It's crucial to understand that intellect and intelligence are not the same thing. Intellect is a subset, a part of a much greater intelligence. Intelligence encompasses not only logic and reason, but also intuition, a knowing that transcends linear thinking. The greatest breakthroughs, the most profound insights in human history, have come not from intellect alone, but from intuition. Intellect can take you far, but intuition can take you beyond, to realms of truth that intellect alone cannot fathom. Intuition resides at the center of your being. It's universal and transcends the personal. It connects you to the entirety of existence. When you allow intuition to guide you, you're no longer living from the periphery of life, caught up in the ego's concerns. You begin to experience life from a place of harmony, where the mind, heart, and spirit align. In this space, your decisions come not from a place of fear or calculation, but from a deeper knowing that feels right and true. This shift toward intuition is why mystics speak of the oneness of all existence. The intellect, by its nature, divides. It breaks everything into parts, separating reality into categories. But intuition unites. It brings you to the understanding that everything is connected, that all existence flows from a singular source. When you move from the mind's circumference to the heart's center, you step beyond intellect's limitations and into the boundless expanse of intuition. This is the path to realizing the infinite, to experiencing the oneness that lies beyond thought. To tap into intuition, we need to balance intellect with openness and surrender. We can use our intellect to navigate the practical aspects of life, but we must also allow ourselves to trust our deeper knowing. This requires humility, a recognition that we don't have all the answers, and that sometimes it's okay not to understand. Imagine climbing a mountain. The intellect is like a map, guiding you through the terrain. But once you reach the peak, the map becomes useless. You no longer need instructions. You simply experience the view. Intuition is that experience, the part of us that goes beyond intellectual understanding. And so, as we close, I invite you to reflect on this journey from intellect to intuition. In your own life, when was the last time you truly listened to your intuition? How often does your intellect take the reins, even in situations where it isn't needed? Remember, true intelligence emerges when intellect and intuition work together in harmony. Let your intuition be your guide to deeper understanding, greater connection, and a life that resonates with the world around you. Chapter 3. Imagination. Have you ever wondered if the ideas and images that fill your mind are truly your own? In an era dominated by screens and constant connectivity, we may be losing touch with the most personal aspects of our imagination. Imagination and intuition, though both deeply intertwined with perception, serve entirely different purposes. Intuition is purely observational. It is a mirror reflecting what already exists, not creating anything new. Imagine a crystal clear lake on a moonlit night, its surface so calm that the stars above are mirrored perfectly in the water. Intuition functions similarly. It is a passive, silent reflection, free from interference or distortion. This clarity, often referred to as the third eye in Eastern traditions, is a perception that exists beyond the realm of thought, embodying pure awareness. Like our eyes, which simply inform us of what's around us without modifying or inventing anything, intuition merely shows us what is. In stark contrast, imagination is the active architect of our inner world. It's the faculty responsible for dreams and fantasies, the part of the mind that spins possibilities and concocts vivid stories within our consciousness. Every night, as we sleep, this imaginative faculty takes flight, crafting scenarios and landscapes that feel intensely real. Interestingly, when we wake, we usually recognize these dreams for what they are, illusory and transient. However, when night falls again, we find ourselves immersed in new dreams without question. This ability to create seemingly real worlds in our sleep reveals the power and persuasiveness of imagination, which effortlessly convinces us of its reality, at least temporarily. Our imagination doesn't only operate in the realm of night dreams. Even during the day, it can take us into its grip, leading us into daydreams where we visualize alternate realities. For instance, we might imagine ourselves as the president of a country or the world's richest person. there's often a subtle awareness within us that these fantasies are unlikely to come true, but their allure keeps us captivated. When this tendency grows excessive, it can detach us from reality and begin to affect our sanity. Psychiatric hospitals around the world house people who, unable to distinguish imagination from reality, carry on conversations with people who aren't there. They live in worlds of their own making, where the boundaries between their dreams and the outside world have dissolved entirely. Imagination, when it becomes too intense, can produce hallucinations, a mental state where imagined realities seem more vivid than actual life. Many historical figures and religious leaders claim to have encountered divine beings, seen God, or heard celestial messages. While these experiences are often revered, they might simply be products of a deeply conditioned imagination. Their visions and voices could stem from a mind so fully immersed in its own beliefs that it manifests them as concrete experiences. This phenomenon is what psychologists might refer to as the hallucination effect, where repeated exposure to a particular idea under specific conditions can lead to the belief in its real, physical existence. The conditions that foster hallucinations are not arbitrary. They follow certain psychological principles. For instance, long periods of fasting and isolation can weaken the mind's natural defenses, making it more susceptible to suggestion and fantasy. When deprived of sustenance, our cognitive faculties begin to dull, making it easier for imagination to overpower reason. Similarly, isolation deprives us of the grounding influence of society and real-world interactions, pushing us further into our mental landscapes. Religious traditions across cultures have used these techniques, fasting, solitude, silence, to help practitioners attain visionary experiences. However, these visions may not be revelations of an external truth, but rather hallucinatory experiences conjured by an overactive imagination. In the Athos monastery in Europe, monks live under such strict discipline that they are entirely isolated from the outside world. The monastery, which has remained operational for over 1,000 years, is home to 10,000 monks who dedicate their lives to prayer and fasting, chanting only Ave Maria. Cut off from all outside influences and confined to a life of silence and austerity, they sometimes begin to experience intense visions of the Virgin Mary. The lack of human interaction and strict control over every aspect of life creates an environment where imagination thrives, unchecked by external reality. In such conditions, hallucinations are practically inevitable, and those who experience them are often revered, adding further incentive for others to seek similar experiences. Sexual repression is another powerful factor that can heighten the likelihood of hallucinations. Many of these monks experience a buildup of suppressed energy, which then channels itself into their visions. Their dreams and fantasies become intensely vivid, often filled with religious symbols that reflect their devout surroundings. Historically, both male and female ascetics report experiencing visions that align with their respective religious teachings, sometimes even claiming direct communication with divine figures. However, these visions may stem not from an authentic connection with the divine, but from the mind's attempts to compensate for its restrictions. Imagination can act as both a prison and an escape, binding us to the illusions we create and yet offering refuge from the constraints of reality. A man with a strong imagination can create worlds, speak with gods, and wander through lands that no one else can see. But in doing so, he risks losing his grip on reality. Just as a painter pours his soul onto a canvas, imbuing the creation with life, imagination can convince us that our thoughts, hopes, and fears are more substantial than the physical world. This delusion is tempting because it allows us to shape our experiences. But unlike the grounded reflection of intuition, imagination's creations can be seductive illusions that, left unchecked, pull us away from truth. However, true clarity, true perception of reality, requires stepping beyond imagination. Many spiritual teachers like Buddha emphasize silence and a state of mind that is clear and unaffected by imagination. Buddha spoke of attaining a state of serene joy and deep calm after his enlightenment, describing an experience of reality so profound that it remained with him for the rest of his life. For him, there was no God to meet, no visions to behold, just the silent beauty of pure awareness. This serenity, untouched by dreams or hallucinations, is what many call the Buddha nature, a state beyond imagination and intellect. Consider a young boy named Liam who loves to imagine himself as a superhero. His fantasies bring him joy, but they also prevent him from facing the challenges of the real world. When he starts relying too heavily on his imaginary world, he loses touch with reality, struggling to engage with life as it truly is. Imagination is a double-edged sword. It allows us to dream, to create, and to envision possibilities. But when we confuse imagination with intuition, we risk building a world of illusions. Imagination is often fueled by our desires, fears, and fantasies, leading us away from the truth. Intuition, on the other hand, is grounded in reality. It doesn't create illusions, it reveals truths. To develop intuition, we must distinguish between the two, recognizing when we're indulging in fantasies rather than listening to our inner knowing. This requires a sense of discipline and honesty with ourselves. Imagine a lighthouse guiding ships through a storm. Intuition is like that lighthouse, steady, clear, and reliable. Imagination, however, is like the waves crashing against the shore. It can be beautiful and powerful, but it's constantly changing, never steady. By grounding ourselves in reality, we can navigate life with the clarity that intuition provides. Ultimately, the journey to true insight is not about creating a reality that fits our desires, but about dissolving illusions and seeing things as they are. To find this clarity, one must transcend imagination, releasing the stories we tell ourselves. This process requires letting go of dreams, aspirations, and even the comforting images of gods and saviors. In doing so, we return to a state of simplicity and groundedness, experiencing the world without filters and discovering the inner peace that comes with accepting reality as it truly is. Chapter 4. Politics. Imagine a world where rulers don't fight over power or possessions, but are guided by pure insight and wisdom. Is it possible that politics could transcend the power games we're so accustomed to and instead be led by something deeper, perhaps even intuitive? The realm of politics is one where primal instincts often prevail, embodying a survival of the fittest mentality reminiscent of the animal kingdom. Politics is fundamentally about power dynamics, where the strongest and most cunning rise to the top. The predominant ethos is that might is right, and those who gravitate toward political power frequently do so out of an underlying sense of inadequacy or insecurity. Driven by this insecurity, many political figures pursue influence, compensating for a deep-seated feeling of inferiority by projecting dominance. In politics, therefore, one's qualifications or intelligence become secondary to the raw drive for authority and control, and individuals often prioritize power over principles or ideals. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once described this unrelenting drive as the will to power. He argued that it's an inherent human impulse manifesting in numerous facets of life beyond just politics. This urge to assert dominance can arise in families, workplaces, or even friendships, where people attempt to outdo one another to feel superior. Whether it's political office, social standing, or familial influence, the dynamics of power and control define these interactions. This concept reveals that politics isn't just limited to governance or statecraft. It permeates all human relationships, wherever there's a desire to control or dominate others. It's not the title or position that defines politics. It's the impulse to influence others that constitutes the core of all political behavior. Historically, this power dynamic has fueled gender inequalities, with men often casting women as inherently inferior to justify patriarchal systems. By relegating women to domestic roles, men have historically claimed superiority, convincing women to internalize beliefs of inferiority. These comparisons often hinge on physical differences, such as men's greater muscular strength or societal accomplishments, and have been used to assert that women are intellectually or creatively lacking. This narrative disregards the unique strengths women possess, instead painting them as secondary or supportive figures. In reality, comparing men and women on such one-dimensional grounds is inherently flawed, as it fails to acknowledge the diverse and complementary roles that each gender plays. The limitations placed on women have not only been social, but also profoundly personal, restricting their opportunities to pursue intellectual or artistic endeavors. For centuries, women were bound to child-rearing and household duties, which consumed much of their time and energy. It's no wonder that history saw fewer female artists, scholars, or philosophers. Most were rarely granted the luxury of time to explore these pursuits. While men could contemplate philosophy or art, women were expected to maintain the household, care for children, and manage day-to-day responsibilities. Had roles been reversed, men too would have struggled to achieve intellectual or artistic distinction. This discrepancy highlights the bias in historical records and our narrow definition of achievement. Interestingly, women exhibit numerous strengths that are often overlooked or undervalued, such as a greater life expectancy and stronger immune responses. Studies have shown that women generally live longer and suffer fewer illnesses than men, a testament to their resilience. In fact, women are statistically less likely to suffer from mental health crises, such as severe depression or suicidal tendencies. This emotional resilience is rarely acknowledged in discussions about gender and superiority, yet it points to a strength of character that has enabled women to endure countless challenges. Perhaps if resilience and mental fortitude were valued as highly as physical strength or social achievements, society's perception of women might shift to one of respect and equality. The political suppression of women, however, extends beyond physical strength or intellectual output. This strategy has pervaded the most intimate parts of society, embedding itself within family structures and cultural expectations. A woman's role has traditionally been defined by men's needs and desires, with little regard for her own potential or autonomy. This is, at its core, a form of politics, where one group asserts power over another under the guise of tradition or natural order. Men have used political strategies not just in governance but in the structuring of households, imposing an artificial hierarchy within families to reinforce male dominance. Thus, politics isn't confined to the state. It exists in the home, where the assertion of male authority over women has stifled generations. Even today, politics infiltrates every aspect of society, from relationships and workplaces to academia and religious institutions. It's seen in the competitive ladder of university positions, where lecturers strive to become professors, and professors seek to become deans, with each rung marked by a relentless climb toward authority. Religious hierarchies, too, are rife with political maneuvering, as priests aim to become bishops, bishops strive for cardinal status, and cardinals vie for the papacy. This constant jostling for position reflects the same political impulse that drives people in statecraft, revealing that the thirst for power is not exclusive to one realm. It permeates all areas where ambition and social structure intersect, underscoring how political behavior is a fundamental part of human interaction. In the modern world, we often idolize those who wield political power, overlooking the shallow motivations that may drive them. Figures like Alexander the Great, Napoleon Bonaparte, and Joseph Stalin exemplify how unchecked ambition and thirst for control can lead to widespread suffering. Though these individuals are often romanticized as strong leaders, they represent an archaic model of power that relies on violence and subjugation. By glorifying their conquests, history has inadvertently praised a might is right philosophy, where strength and domination are seen as virtues. True progress would mean re-evaluating these figures not as heroes, but as products of a flawed and instinct-driven approach to leadership. Intelligence and consciousness, on the other hand, offer an alternative view of power. Rather than wielding influence through force, intelligent leadership seeks to understand and uplift others. This kind of power, based on insight and empathy, doesn't need to prove its strength because it isn't driven by insecurity. True intelligence does not see superiority or inferiority. It values harmony, fairness, and growth. Leaders like Socrates, for example, demonstrated that reasoned debate and ethical inquiry could replace coercive tactics. Their contributions show that true leadership lies not in domination, but in fostering collective wisdom, encouraging a world where right is might, and truth holds more value than brute strength. Stepping back from the quest for dominance can reveal a path toward a more enlightened and self-aware existence. When we recognize that the impulse to assert superiority is born of insecurity, we can begin to transcend it. By abandoning the need to outdo or control others, we enter a realm of greater personal peace and fulfillment. True growth lies in recognizing our inherent worth, which requires no validation from status or influence. When we choose to observe the political circus from a distance, we liberate ourselves from the endless struggle for approval or recognition. This perspective shift enables us to live authentically, free from the trappings of superficial ambition, and to value inner harmony over outward success. The essence of ego, especially in the context of intuitive understanding, plays a significant role in martial arts as demonstrated in traditional Japanese practices like judo, jiu-jitsu, and aikido. These arts emphasize a state of pure presence and absence of ego, allowing practitioners to respond effortlessly to any attack. For example, in a state of true mental clarity, free from ego, one can avoid harm and overpower opponents not through brute force, but through an alignment of mind, body, and energy. This egoless state is crucial for mastery, where a swordsman doesn't just react, but preempts the opponent's moves almost as if he knew them beforehand. This approach teaches that ego is a vulnerability, a point of weakness where even a fleeting thought can disrupt focus and invite defeat. The story of Chanchal Singh, a martial arts practitioner, illustrates this principle. When faced with an attack, Singh could drop his opponent's weapon simply by emitting a powerful sound, an effect not just of physical technique, but of his total mental presence. He explained that this sound is only effective when produced from an egoless state. It disrupts the attacker's mind and halts their aggression momentarily, showcasing the power of intention when divorced from the ego. Such teachings reveal that true skill in martial arts or any art relies less on physical strength and more on a trained, undistracted mind that becomes one with action. In comparison, thinkers like Shankara and Bradley also highlight the contrast between intuitive and intellectual understanding. Bradley, an intellectual, logically argues about truth, while Shankara operates from a space of experience and intuitive knowledge. Bradley's conclusions are a result of reasoned analysis, whereas Shankara's are born from direct perception of reality. This distinction becomes important because, for Shankara, truth is a lived reality, not just an idea. His stance is immovable, not because of stubbornness, but because of a groundedness in personal insight. In contrast, Bradley's intellectual stance is more flexible and susceptible to challenge, reflecting the inherent limitations of purely intellectual pursuits when compared to the assuredness that comes with intuitive experience. In politics, these three levels, instinct, intellect, and intuition, reflect different approaches to power and leadership. Politicians operating on instinct, like Hitler, view power as an end that justifies any means, often employing manipulation and aggression. They are driven by a primal urge to dominate, lacking concern for higher principles or collective well-being. Politicians on the intellectual level, however, are more invested in ideals of truth and justice. They value winning an argument not for personal gain, but for the sake of truth, willing to accept defeat if presented with a superior argument. Yet, even at this level, subtle traces of ego can persist, as the desire to influence or convince others might still be fueled by personal validation. At the intuitive level, figures like Buddha, Mahavira, and Lao Tzu represent a wholly different approach, where leadership emerges naturally from wisdom rather than ambition. These leaders have no need to seek followers or impose their views, as their mere presence and wisdom attract people. They are not engaged in a quest for validation. Instead, they guide others who seek knowledge and understanding. Their intuitive insights go beyond conventional thinking, offering solutions that defy ego-driven struggles and appeal to universal principles. Buddha, for instance, diffuses the rivalry over river rights between two kingdoms by encouraging them to simply use the water instead of claiming ownership, an insight that turns a potential war into peaceful coexistence. In such a world, meritocracy could be achieved if politicians across these levels learn from one another, with intuitive leaders guiding intellectuals, who in turn could influence those driven by instincts. The intuitive, being farthest from ego, would bring clarity and direction to the intellectuals, who could then help temper the raw ambitions of the instinctive politicians. This hierarchy would encourage a system where wisdom flows downwards from those most equipped to provide it, fostering an environment where insight and compassion guide policy rather than mere survival or self-interest. Ultimately, envisioning a world where intuitive leaders form the core of governance offers a path toward authentic democracy, moving away from the chaos of mobocracy toward a system that honors wisdom and humanity. For this transformation, educational institutions must play a critical role, teaching not only political theory, but also political art, and cultivating values like integrity and wisdom in future leaders. Only then can a balanced, human-centered approach to leadership be realized, one that truly values individuals, respects wisdom, and fosters cooperation at all levels of society. If wisdom were to guide our world, would we still have wars, greed, and endless power struggles? Or is it that the world we live in, driven by ego and survival, is a reflection of a collective refusal to look within? Section 3. Strategies. Drop the mind that thinks in prose. Revive another kind of mind that thinks in poetry. Put aside all your expertise in syllogism. Let songs be your way of life. Move from intellect to intuition, from the head to the heart, because the heart is closer to the mysteries. To journey into intuition, we need to transform the way we approach life. This means setting aside the mind trained to think in logic and facts, and embracing a softer, more poetic way of being. Osho invites us to drop the mind that relies on prose and reasoning, and instead, to revive a mind that can dance with life in a rhythm of poetry. Moving from prose to poetry symbolizes shifting from a rigid intellectual mindset to a fluid, intuitive one. This approach encourages us to engage with life not through judgment and analysis, but through direct, heartfelt experience. Putting aside syllogism or logical reasoning frees us to adopt a different lens, one where intuition leads the way. Logic may bring us solutions, but it also limits us to what can be explained. Songs, metaphors, and symbols allow us to explore truths that intellect alone cannot reach. Living life through songs, through the lyrical flow of intuition, Osho suggests, can reveal new layers of understanding. This shift from the rigid structure of logic to the freedom of intuition can unlock new perspectives, allowing us to perceive life in a vibrant and profound way. One of the primary strategies for developing intuition is moving from the head to the heart. The head, while necessary for rational thinking, keeps us bound to the material, the measurable, and the predictable. The heart, on the other hand, is closer to the mysteries of existence, to realms where intellect struggles to reach. By nurturing an open heart, we align ourselves with a type of knowing that bypasses the analytical mind and taps into a more universal, connected wisdom. When we live from the heart, we gain access to insights and truths that are felt rather than thought. Another essential practice is to cultivate stillness. Intuition thrives in quiet, receptive spaces where the constant noise of thought subsides. Meditative practices or simply moments of mindful silence allow us to tune into the subtle whispers of intuition. This is where our deepest insights and truest answers often emerge, not from loud mental debate, but from the quiet of inner listening. In this space, intuition has room to rise, offering guidance that feels right, even if it cannot be fully explained. Regular moments of stillness can help sharpen this ability to hear our inner knowing more clearly. Finally, embracing uncertainty becomes a powerful strategy for intuitive living. Intuition is not about having clear-cut answers or foolproof plans. It's about trusting an inner guidance system that operates in the unknown. This requires courage and a willingness to step into experiences without the safety net of intellect. By letting go of the need for rigid answers, we make space for the unexpected insights and inspirations that intuition brings. This openness to mystery fosters a dynamic relationship with life, where each moment is an invitation to learn, grow, and deepen in understanding. Embracing this journey moves us closer to the heart of life itself, opening doors to wisdom that intellect alone could never unlock. First strategy: peel the onion. At our essence, human nature is simple, but over time, layers of conditioning and societal expectations build up, creating a complex personality that covers up this simplicity. Much like peeling an onion, to uncover one's true self, we must strip away these layers. These layers, or filters, distort both how we see ourselves and how we perceive the world. By peeling them away, we can start to experience a clearer, unfiltered reality. The many layers of personality have been shaped by years of cultural conditioning, ideologies, emotional responses, and internalized beliefs. Over time, these layers filter everything we experience, adding interpretations that cloud reality. Each layer, whether formed by our physical senses, our emotions, or our social conditioning, alters how we view and interact with the world around us. By the time an experience reaches us, it's often so distorted by these filters that little of the original truth remains. Instead, we end up with fragments, piecing them together to create our own version of reality, which is often far from the truth. In a sense, our minds are wired to fill in gaps where there's missing information. When we're presented with only a small piece of the whole picture, we create narratives and connections, even if they aren't real, to make sense of it. This compulsion to link unrelated pieces is the mind's attempt to maintain a feeling of order and understanding, but it often leads us further from the truth. The philosopher George Gurdjieff referred to these internal filters as buffers. These buffers are mental constructs that shield us from the sometimes shocking or uncomfortable nature of reality. They protect our sense of identity, our dreams, and our illusions, preventing us from confronting deeper truths that may disrupt our understanding of ourselves and the world. They allow us to remain in a world of familiar illusions, even if that world is built on lies and half-truths. Philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once remarked that if you take away people's illusions, they may not be able to live. He argued that for most of humanity, survival depends on these lies and illusions. But what kind of life can really flourish on the foundation of lies? A life that depends on deception cannot bring true fulfillment or happiness. With illusions comes misery. With truth, there's potential for true peace and happiness. Yet society continues to reinforce these filters, protecting us from truths that could ultimately lead to a deeper understanding of existence. The challenge then is to peel away these layers of our constructed self, the onion of personality, and uncover our original, authentic nature. The first step in this process is to address the physical senses, the first and outermost layer of filters through which we experience the world. 1. The physical senses. The first layer is made up of our corrupted physical senses. It's essential to understand that our senses don't operate in their natural state. Over time, they've been influenced, trained, and conditioned to perceive reality in a way that aligns with social norms and expectations. Society, culture, and even family influence what we are taught to notice, ignore, and respond to. Sight is a clear example of this. While our eyes are naturally designed to observe, what we actually see is filtered by societal expectations. For instance, we avoid direct eye contact with strangers as prolonged gazes can be interpreted as impolite or even aggressive. This avoidance prevents us from truly seeing others, from recognizing unspoken feelings or emotions. People may say one thing, but their facial expressions and body language could suggest the opposite. However, because we've been conditioned to avoid fully observing others, we often miss these subtle cues. Over time, we lose the ability to perceive the full reality of those around us. Smell is another sense that has been deeply repressed, particularly due to the repression of sexuality in many cultures. Smell is one of the most primal and direct ways animals communicate sexual readiness and attraction. For many animals, specific scents signal when a partner is ready for mating, and they can even recognize these signals across significant distances. Human society, however, has diminished this natural sense. Culturally, body odor is considered undesirable, and we mask it with deodorants and perfumes. We condition ourselves to ignore or avoid certain natural scents. This repression has dulled one of our most powerful senses, disconnecting us from an aspect of ourselves that could provide an intuitive understanding of others. Our language even reflects this repression. To smell is associated with something undesirable, rather than being an essential sense. Hearing is similarly selective. For instance, someone living in a forest environment might develop an acute awareness of sounds that signal danger, such as the rustling of leaves indicating an approaching predator. In modern society, where such threats are minimal, we've dulled this sensitivity. We only hear what we consider useful or relevant. The subtle sounds of nature, or even the subtle emotions conveyed in people's voices, often go unnoticed. We filter out many sounds that don't immediately impact our daily survival. which can disconnect us from the subtleties and richness of our surroundings. Touch has also been restricted by societal norms. Many cultures discourage physical expressions of affection, even between family members. We are often taught to keep a certain distance from others to avoid being too forward. This cultural discomfort with physical closeness limits our ability to connect deeply with others. Physical touch can be one of the most direct ways to convey warmth, acceptance, and understanding, yet it's frequently seen as inappropriate or uncomfortable. This distancing not only suppresses our sense of touch, but also creates a barrier to forming authentic, compassionate connections with others. These layers of conditioning around our physical senses create the first layer of filters through which we experience life. They make us hesitant, closed off, and disconnected, distorting our experience of reality. Our senses become unreliable, feeding us information that aligns with social conventions rather than with truth. Reclaiming sensitivity and openness. To peel away these filters, we must start by re-engaging with our senses in a natural and unrestricted way. This is the goal of practices like yoga, meditation, and mindfulness, which work to help us shed our physical and mental conditioning. These practices train us to be fully present in each moment, grounding our awareness in the here and now. By slowing down, breathing deeply, and allowing ourselves to simply be, we create space to reconnect with the world as it is, rather than how our minds have been conditioned to interpret it. As we learn to see, smell, hear, and touch without the burden of societal conditioning, we begin to experience reality as it is, pure, vibrant, and unfiltered. For instance, if you're sitting on the grass instead of absent-mindedly plucking it, try to connect with it fully. Close your eyes and become aware of the texture and temperature of the grass beneath your fingers, feeling each blade's softness or firmness. Allow yourself to notice the subtle fragrance of the earth mingling with the fresh air. Feel the coolness of the grass contrasting with the warmth of the sunlight touching your skin, each sensation distinct yet harmonizing with the others. These small practices of presence and sensory awareness are powerful. They remind us of our connection to the natural world and help us rediscover an open, uncluttered, and childlike experience of life. Engaging with our environment this way brings us back to a state of natural wonder, free from the rush and noise of our usual routines. In everyday life, you might take small moments to pause and truly see people, to make eye contact and allow a genuine connection to form. Notice the warmth in a handshake, the energy and humanity in another's gaze, or the unique tone and rhythm in someone's voice when they speak. Engaging with others through our senses, without the distraction of our mental filters, can profoundly deepen our interactions, making even brief encounters feel significant. Taking the time to genuinely listen to someone without rushing to respond allows us to appreciate their words and emotions in a new way, honoring their perspective and fostering mutual understanding. Gradually, you can reclaim a natural sensitivity that was lost over time, restoring a sense of openness and allowing life to reach you without the distortions of filters. In doing so, you gain not only a clearer perspective of reality, but also a heightened sense of connection to yourself and those around you. This mindful presence awakens a richer, more vibrant experience of life, where each moment feels fuller, more complete. As you let go of conditioned patterns of thought and perception, your awareness expands, allowing you to truly see and feel the world around you. This restored sensitivity brings a deep sense of fulfillment as you rediscover the joy and wonder of simply being present, engaged, and fully alive in each moment. 2. Conditioning. The second layer that separates us from true perception is conditioning. Societal, political, religious, and ideological belief systems that shape our thoughts and behaviors. These belief systems act as barriers to genuine communication. When we identify as members of particular groups or ideologies, such as being a Hindu or a Muslim, a communist or a fascist, we often lose our ability to connect deeply with those outside our belief systems. Instead of fostering open dialogue, these beliefs create divisions. In truth, life is a continuous exchange of energy and ideas, a communication with everything around us, the trees, rivers, sun, moon, animals, and people. However, when we are confined by rigid belief systems, we lose the openness required for real connection. Dialogue fades because we are too occupied with our own ideas, assuming they are the ultimate truth. We may listen to others, but only out of politeness, without truly hearing them. Thus, debates, arguments, and discussions may occur, but genuine dialogue, the meeting of hearts and minds, becomes impossible. To see, hear, and understand others, we need to let go of these belief systems. By clinging to labels such as Hindu, Muslim, Christian, or atheist, we limit ourselves and miss the essence of life. Locked in our own mental constructs, we resemble houses without windows. Close, sometimes even clash with one another, but rarely truly meet. Even though we may touch in passing, real connection remains elusive because we are imprisoned by our beliefs. Each person carries their own mental prison, limiting exploration and discovery. Beliefs create a sense of certainty that discourages curiosity, blocking us from the full experience of life. With a fixed belief, one becomes wary of anything that might challenge it, sticking to a narrow world rather than embracing a vast, diverse one. Belief systems can create an as-if kind of knowledge, an illusion that we know something simply because we have a belief about it. For instance, one might claim to know about God or truth without truly understanding these concepts, relying instead on inherited ideas. This creates a hypnotic state of mind, where we feel secure in our limited understanding rather than seeking genuine knowledge. Men and women are also conditioned differently based on societal roles. Men are taught to be tough, competitive, and unemotional, while women are often conditioned to be submissive, confined to roles that limit their personal growth. Men suppress tears, associating them with weakness, even though crying can be profoundly healing. Women, on the other hand, are encouraged to cry and sometimes use it as a tactic, knowing it can sway others when words fail. This creates patterns of manipulation on both sides, distorting natural emotions into strategic responses and robbing tears of their natural beauty. This second layer of conditioning is one of the hardest to break because it has been ingrained over a lifetime. Political ideologies, religious beliefs, and cultural norms merge into a complex web within us, shaping our identity to the extent that we no longer distinguish these beliefs from our true selves. When someone identifies strongly with a belief, like Hinduism or Islam, they feel personally threatened if that belief is challenged. This attachment to belief can lead to defensiveness, even violence, against anyone perceived as a threat to that identity. By shedding these belief systems, we can return to a place of true understanding. When we free ourselves from ideological constraints, we open up to a state of childlike wonder and readiness to explore. Life becomes an adventure, filled with mystery and endless discovery. Without rigid beliefs, we embrace the unknown, maintaining a mindset of not knowing, which is central to practices like Sufism and Zen. Staying in this not knowing state keeps our awareness fresh and open. If we acquire knowledge, we let it go, avoiding the trap of certainty that turns into a mental cage. By remaining in this childlike openness, true communication and communion become possible, allowing us to connect with life and with others in a way that is genuine, unfiltered, and boundless. 3. Rationalization. Rationalization is one of the most subtle and pervasive ways we shield ourselves from true understanding. It involves using pseudo-reasoning, excuses, and borrowed explanations to justify our behaviors, ideas, and perspectives without truly understanding or owning them. This filter gives us a false sense of rationality, as though we're deeply logical beings simply by adopting logical arguments. However, these are often just borrowed ideas and arguments we haven't fully processed or personalized. We may repeat concepts from thinkers, philosophers, or religious figures, thinking we're engaging with reason, but true rationality doesn't come from imitating others. To be genuinely rational, one must develop their thoughts from authentic, first-hand experience, not second-hand sources. Real rationality comes from intelligence, which is distinct from intellect. The intellectual person is often skilled at manipulating ideas and presenting arguments, but these ideas may lack depth or connection to lived experience. In contrast, a truly intelligent person has an open, curious mind that is not merely gathering information, but actively seeking truth. Pseudo-rationality, on the other hand, relies on learned structures of logic that can appear logical without being deeply meaningful. This type of reasoning may help us win debates or avoid scrutiny, but lacks the genuine insight that real intelligence brings. It's a mask of rationality, a superficial construct. Consider a humorous story. A man is drowning and cries for help, shouting that he can't swim. An old man sitting nearby, chewing tobacco, responds, "I can't swim either, but you don't see me making a fuss." This response may sound rational. Why make a fuss if one can't swim? However, the context matters. The old man is safe on the riverbank, while the other man is drowning. Similarly, when people parrot words of wisdom without understanding the context, they miss the essence. For example, repeating a profound statement by Buddha or Muhammad without internalizing the meaning does not make one wise. It only imitates wisdom. Pseudo-rationalization often stems from a fear of confronting our true nature or a fear of judgment from others. By rationalizing our actions, we avoid admitting our limitations or acknowledging areas where we lack understanding. For instance, we might justify not pursuing our dreams by saying, "I'm just being practical," when the truth may be that we're afraid of failure. Rationalization keeps us stuck in a limited perception, as it becomes easier to rely on surface-level justifications than to explore our deeper motivations. This type of reasoning often becomes a barrier to self-awareness, leading to a disconnection from our true desires and thoughts. Instead of questioning why we act or feel a certain way, we build layers of rationalizations that obscure the underlying truth. Rationalization creates a comfortable bubble where we're safe from self-doubt or insecurity, but it also blocks personal growth. When we rely on pseudo-reasoning, we are essentially trapping ourselves in a loop of intellectual stagnation, cut off from deeper insight. True reasoning requires a commitment to openness and clarity, a willingness to confront one's limitations without excuse. Philosopher Karl Jaspers describes reason as a commitment to unity and clarity. According to him, reason should aim to transcend logic, using it as a tool rather than a crutch. Genuine reasoning ultimately arises from a place of wisdom, where one uses logic to deepen understanding and not to hide from truth. Pseudo-reasoning, on the other hand, builds walls, while true reasoning creates bridges, guiding us to greater understanding and connection. Ultimately, rationalization serves as a barrier to authentic self-awareness. It's a defense mechanism that prevents us from truly engaging with our thoughts and feelings. By identifying this layer and working to remove it, we open the door to genuine reasoning and self-awareness. Instead of living in a world of borrowed beliefs and hollow justifications, we begin to cultivate our own insights, leading to a richer, more honest experience of life. This requires dropping pretense and embracing vulnerability, which can be challenging but ultimately leads to true clarity. 4. Sentimentality. Sentimentality, or pseudo-emotion, is a superficial layer of feeling that often disguises itself as genuine empathy or compassion. This filter creates the illusion of deep emotional involvement, but lacks the substance of true feeling. It's a performance of emotion, a surface-level reaction that doesn't penetrate to the core. Sentimentality tends to focus on creating a dramatic display, often exaggerating trivial matters, making much ado about nothing. While it may seem harmless, this layer is a powerful barrier to genuine emotional connection and understanding, as it keeps us trapped in shallow responses rather than fostering real empathy. Sentimentality is often impotent sympathy, an emotional display that doesn't lead to meaningful action or change. For instance, if someone is ill, the sentimental response might be to cry or panic, but this does little to ease the suffering of the person in need. Similarly, if a crisis occurs, such as a fire or accident, crying or becoming hysterical may feel like an emotional response, but doesn't help address the problem. Real empathy, by contrast, involves stepping in and taking supportive, effective action rather than just reacting on the surface. This pseudo-feeling is often rooted in societal conditioning, where people are taught to express certain emotions because it's expected or culturally approved. Society often encourages emotional displays, equating them with genuine compassion. This conditioning becomes so ingrained that people begin to believe they are genuinely feeling, even though their responses are automatic and conditioned. They may cry at a sad movie or feel outrage at a distant injustice, yet this feeling doesn't lead to meaningful change in their behavior or actions. True feeling involves genuine involvement and commitment, rather than performative expressions of emotion. Real compassion or empathy doesn't just stop at feeling bad for someone. It inspires us to help, support, or connect on a deeper level. True empathy is transformative, meaning it changes our actions and priorities. When we are truly moved, we take action. We step in and offer help or do something constructive. This is the fundamental difference between sentimentality and genuine feeling. The former creates a fleeting, shallow response, while the latter leads to lasting change and commitment. Sentimentality often keeps us emotionally stagnant, as it becomes a habit to respond superficially rather than deeply. We begin to rely on preconditioned responses instead of connecting with our true feelings. For example, we might express sadness or outrage in situations that don't actually resonate with us, simply because we feel it's the right reaction. Over time, this habitual emotional response numbs our capacity for true feeling, as we become desensitized to genuine emotion in favor of sentimental reactions. The female mind is often more susceptible to this layer of sentimental expression, though this is not exclusive. Sentimentalism has become a field of expertise for many, where they become skilled at displaying socially acceptable emotions without truly connecting with them. This doesn't imply that women are less capable of genuine feeling. Rather, societal norms often encourage them to exhibit certain emotional behaviors. As a result, sentimentality often becomes a habit that blocks the development of real empathy and compassion. Breaking free from sentimentality requires recognizing and challenging conditioned responses. By questioning our emotional habits and exploring the motives behind our reactions, we can begin to cultivate genuine empathy. Instead of responding on autopilot, we can pause and assess whether our emotions lead to meaningful action or change. This awareness helps us differentiate between surface-level sentimentality and true feeling, ultimately leading to a more authentic and compassionate way of connecting with others. 5. Repression. Repression is a layer that distorts our instincts and natural impulses by pushing them into the unconscious. It's a response often imposed by societal or religious conditioning, which labels certain behaviors or desires as unacceptable. Rather than addressing these impulses constructively, repression forces them into the shadows, where they can mutate into more harmful forms. Over time, this results in a state of inner conflict, where natural instincts are at odds with learned beliefs, leading to a fragmented, neurotic self. Repression not only hides these instincts, but distorts and poisons them, creating confusion and psychological tension. The philosopher and spiritual teacher Gurdjieff noted that repression causes our inner centers to become misaligned. Each center of the mind and body has its own role, and when these functions overlap or interfere, it creates disorder. For instance, the sex center, if repressed, can shift to the mind, leading people to seek satisfaction through mental fantasies or imagery rather than genuine connection. This misalignment creates an artificial relationship to one's body and instincts, disconnecting individuals from their natural responses. Repression affects more than just sexual instincts. It can influence various aspects of life. Emotions like anger, joy, or curiosity, when repressed, become twisted into resentment, anxiety, or compulsive behavior. These distorted emotions create an inner tension that is difficult to resolve because they aren't being expressed naturally. Society and religion often advocate repression as a means of maintaining order, but this strategy backfires, as it leads to pent-up emotions and unfulfilled desires that disrupt one's peace of mind and well-being. Religious repression, in particular, teaches people to deny their instincts, often using guilt and fear as motivators. This approach doesn't help people understand or master their desires, but rather demonizes them, turning natural impulses into something forbidden. Over time, these impulses become even more compelling, as repression strengthens their grip on the psyche. This cycle of suppression and guilt creates a disconnect between who we are and who we're allowed to be, leading to inner turmoil and dissatisfaction. The repression of instincts creates a pseudo-center in the mind, where thoughts become a substitute for real experiences. For example, someone might fantasize about situations rather than actively engaging with them, turning to mental imagery as a substitute for direct experience. This pseudo-life in the mind becomes a refuge for those unable to confront their true feelings and desires. The result is an imbalanced psyche, where the mind and body are no longer aligned, each pulling in a different direction. True freedom involves integrating these repressed instincts, bringing them into conscious awareness. Rather than viewing desires and impulses as threats, they can be understood as aspects of one's whole self, needing expression and balance. By acknowledging and accepting these instincts, one can transform repression into self-understanding. This doesn't mean acting on every impulse, but learning to understand and channel them healthily, without guilt or denial. 6. Corrupted intuition. Corrupted intuition represents a diminished awareness of our natural intuitive ability, often hidden beneath layers of conditioning. Intuition is different from reasoning, as it skips steps and leaps directly to conclusions. While reason follows a methodical path, intuition provides instant answers without a process, as seen in cases where mathematicians can solve complex problems instantly. This intuitive insight, now recognized in mathematics, defies the step-by-step process even computers require, highlighting the unique power of intuition. Intuition often emerges when reason reaches its limits. Many scientists have observed that their greatest discoveries came through intuitive insights rather than rational processes. For instance, Madame Curie struggled with a problem for years, exhausting every logical approach until she finally gave up and slept. In that state of surrender, the answer came to her, showing how intuition bypassed reason. Similarly, Buddha's enlightenment came only after he abandoned his intense striving. These stories illustrate that intuition can arise when we let go of mental effort. However, in modern life, intuition is often blocked. People's intuitive abilities have become corrupted due to an over-reliance on logic. Women's hunches or gut feelings can sometimes offer insights that are hard to explain, but have life-saving potential. Though often dismissed as irrational, these hunches are remnants of intuition, offering a flash of insight that logic cannot produce. If we can free ourselves from layers of conditioning and release our fixation on reasoning, intuition can flourish as a natural guidance system. In Eastern traditions, this inner wisdom is known as the inner guru or inner master, providing direction from within. With clear intuition, one no longer needs to rely solely on external advice, as solutions and guidance emerge naturally. Intuition, ultimately, is being deeply in tune with oneself. When we allow this deeper part of our consciousness to guide us, answers can arise effortlessly, and we can access insights and solutions that resonate with our true self. Transition to next point. Once we've begun peeling away our conditioned layers, we tap into a more authentic, intuitive way of being. But to deepen this connection, we also need to understand and embrace qualities traditionally associated with femininity, such as intuition and receptivity. Second strategy, function from the feminine. To function from the feminine is to tap into the powerful and often underappreciated qualities of receptivity, intuition, and creativity. It's not about embodying a particular gender, but embracing energies that are nurturing, receptive, and fluid. Think of the feminine as a deep reservoir of wisdom that is accessible when we allow ourselves to step out of the busyness of the mind and into the natural rhythm of being. The feminine invites us to live from a space of openness, where we trust the flow of life to guide us instead of trying to control every outcome. In our modern world, which often values productivity and action over patience and reflection, functioning from the feminine may seem like a foreign concept. But when we truly begin to understand its power, we see that it's not about doing less. It's about doing in a way that feels aligned with our deepest self. Functioning from the feminine means recognizing that there is immense power in receiving, waiting, and listening. It's a different kind of energy from what we are often taught to cultivate, but it's just as potent, if not more so. At the core of functioning from the feminine is receptivity. In this state, we are attuned to what is unfolding around us, open to receiving messages and insights from our intuition. Receptivity means being able to be still enough to hear our own inner voice, which often speaks to us in whispers. In this world where we're constantly bombarded with information and noise, being receptive can feel like a challenge. However, it's through this receptivity that we connect to our intuition, and it's from this connection that we receive the guidance we need. It is an act of opening, of allowing, of receiving what comes rather than forcing what we think should happen. In recent decades, scientific research has reinforced this understanding, revealing that we have two distinct mental hemispheres. Our left brain is logical, analytical, and practical. It thrives on order and calculation. The right brain, by contrast, is creative, intuitive, poetic, and spiritual. These two hemispheres coexist in conflict, a reflection of the world's dichotomies, creating an inner politics. For centuries, society has privileged the left brain's rationality, conditioning people, even left-handed children, who are naturally inclined toward the right hemisphere's intuition and creativity, to conform to this logical, ordered way of thinking. This enforcement has shaped human culture toward competition, reason, and order, relegating creativity, emotion, and intuitive insights to a secondary role. The balance of masculine and feminine energies. This division between the rational and the intuitive parallels the broader human experience of masculine and feminine energies. The left brain's qualities, rationality, order, efficiency, are associated with the masculine, while the right brain embodies the feminine qualities of intuition, grace, and spontaneity. Over time, men have dominated women, pushing them toward masculine traits to survive in a competitive world. Today, as some women strive for equality, they adopt the rational, goal-oriented characteristics of men. They become logical, strategic, and competitive, shifting away from their innate intuitive nature. Yet the cost of this struggle for power is a loss of the feminine essence, mirroring the inner conflict of the mind's hemispheres. This dynamic can be seen across social and economic divides as well. The wealthy, driven by calculation, efficiency, and accumulation, align with the left brain's qualities. In contrast, those on the fringes of society, the poor, the unprivileged, often exhibit a natural connection to the right brain's intuitive, spiritual side. Thus, revolutions that aim to shift power often end up perpetuating the same dynamics they sought to upend. Those who come to power adopt the same traits as the oppressors, and the cycles of power and subjugation continue. Integration and inner harmony. This conflict ultimately exists within each individual. The challenge is to find inner harmony by balancing the masculine and feminine energies within ourselves. Strengthening the bridge between the two hemispheres, integrating them, leads to a unified mind, a true crystallization of being, as George Gurdjieff called it. When we achieve this internal unity, we transcend duality, experiencing life with both grace and efficiency, love and wisdom. Consider the story of a Berliner who visited Vienna and brusquely demanded directions, receiving a gentle rebuke for his harshness. Later, a Viennese man in Berlin asked for directions politely, only to be hurried through with rapid instructions and no patience for his gratitude. The Berliner's mind is the masculine, logical one. The Viennese mind is the feminine, graceful one. In our world, if this struggle continues, the logical may dominate, but at a cost. In losing our feminine side, we risk becoming machines, efficient but disconnected from our essence. Finding inner peace to improve relationships. People often ask how to achieve deeper relationships. The answer lies in first achieving inner peace. Only by resolving this inner battle can one enter a relationship without projecting internal struggles onto a partner. When one hemisphere dominates, whether through reason overpowering intuition or vice versa, relationships mirror this conflict. The resolution of inner dualities is therefore key not just for personal harmony, but for truly harmonious relationships. Mullah Nasruddin once said, "I've put off the evil day long enough, but I have to go." When asked if he meant a doctor or dentist visit, he replied, "No, I'm getting married." While marriage seems like an oasis of connection, it often turns into a reflection of inner turmoil. People avoid the commitment, sensing the mirroring of their inner battle. Living from the heart, choosing to cultivate the right brain's qualities, the feminine side, nurtures an inward orientation that values inner peace over external success. This is the path of the seeker, the poet, the spiritualist. True richness comes not from outer achievements, but from a life lived in harmony with both sides of one's being. By integrating the masculine and feminine, we live not only successfully, but authentically, in touch with both the poetry and pragmatism of life. A man was sitting with his friend in a quiet corner of a bustling cafe, sipping tea and gazing into his cup with a thoughtful expression. He sighed, then muttered to his companion, "You know, my friend, life is like a cup of tea." The other man, intrigued by this sudden insight, asked, "But why? Why do you say that life is like a cup of tea?" The first man looked back at him, almost perplexed by the question. "How should I know?" he replied, shrugging his shoulders. "Am I a philosopher?" This small exchange beautifully encapsulates the difference between intuition and logic. The man's initial statement came from his right brain, an intuitive, non-analytical response that captured a feeling, a perception of reality, as simple and as complete as it was. But the friend's logical question, the why, broke the flow, demanding reasoning and analysis where none existed. The right hemisphere can speak to us through flashes of insight or wordless understanding, but it cannot rationalize. It can only witness and feel. When questioned, it has nothing to offer but silence. Consider this scenario. You're on a walk and you see a lotus flower blooming. You might say, "Beautiful." But if someone beside you demands, "Why is it beautiful? Explain why you feel this way," you may find yourself at a loss for words. Beauty itself, the experience of it, transcends analysis. It's simply felt, understood without thought. The ancient wisdom texts like the Upanishads often speak in this language of simplicity. God is. Don't ask why. They do not aim to prove. They state what is. Look at Jesus' words. "My God is in heaven. I am his son, and he is my father." He didn't claim it was rational or logical. He simply expressed a truth as he knew it. Asked to provide proof, he would say, "I know by my own authority." He relied on his intuitive knowing, his direct connection to something beyond the realm of reason. And for that very reason, people didn't understand him. He was not crucified for any crime, but because his right brain knowing clashed with the rational, logic-bound world. Rationality, the left brain, often feels threatened by the unpredictability of the intuitive mind. Similarly, Lao Tzu once said, "The whole world seems clever, only I am muddle-headed." He was an intuitive, right-brain thinker navigating a world dominated by the logical left brain. The right hemisphere is the realm of art, poetry, and love. The left hemisphere is the realm of logic, structure, and science. Yoga and Zen are often contrasted paths to transcendence. Yoga, with its structured disciplines, aligns with the left brain, while Zen, flowing freely and unpredictably, aligns with the right brain. Zen is like stumbling upon an open door you simply walk in. Yoga, on the other hand, can feel like chiseling your way through a wall. The nature of Zen often resists explanation, so Zen masters teach through stories. Words fail where stories succeed. They give us a glimpse of something more profound, bypassing the logical mind and reaching directly into intuition. One such Zen story begins with a wise burglar named Goso Hoyen. When people asked him, "What is Zen?" he would tell them this story. The story begins with an old burglar preparing to retire. His son, eager to carry on the family business, asked him to teach him everything he knew. The father agreed, but he didn't start with a lesson in lockpicking or planning. Instead, he decided to teach in his own way, a way that would ignite the son's intuition rather than feed his logic. That night, they broke into a house together. As they worked in the dark, the father spotted a large chest and told his son to climb inside to fetch the clothes. The son obeyed, and as soon as he was inside, the father closed the lid, locking it tightly. Then, without a word, he created a racket, deliberately waking the household before slipping away into the night. The son, trapped in the chest, was immediately flooded with anger, fear, and confusion. He felt abandoned and betrayed by his father. As footsteps approached, he realized that no amount of rational thought could save him. There was no logical solution, no methodical approach to get out of the locked chest and avoid the angry household. For the first time, his left brain had nothing to offer. In that intense, desperate moment, He stopped trying to think and simply reacted. An idea sparked in his mind, a strange idea that made no sense, but he followed it anyway. He began to meow like a cat. When a servant heard him, she took a candle and opened the chest to investigate. Seizing the moment, the boy blew out the candle, pushed past her, and dashed out of the house, evading the family members who rushed after him. As he ran, he came upon a well. Instinctively, without stopping to consider why, he picked up a stone and threw it into the well, producing a loud splash. The family, thinking the burglar had jumped into the well, crowded around it, giving him the perfect opportunity to escape into the darkness. When the son finally made it home, he burst in, angry and overwhelmed, ready to vent to his father about his terrifying night. But the father simply waved him off, saying, "There's no need to tell me the details. You're here. That means you've learned the art." The father's teaching was unconventional, but profound. He hadn't given his son a manual or a set of instructions. He'd forced him into a situation where only the right brain, intuitive, spontaneous, and non-linear could save him. Burglary is a matter of survival and intuition. Logic has little place when every second counts and each moment is new and unpredictable. Zen's wisdom goes beyond duality, embracing the inherent oneness that lies beneath. Imagine a great tree. Its trunk is single, but it splits into two major branches, which in turn branch out into many. The trunk represents being, whole, singular. The first split embodies the mind, creating the binary oppositions that shape our experience. Day and night, man and woman, rational and intuitive. This prism of the mind splits the singular light of being into many hues, forming our reality as we know it. In Zen, the how of life is not as important as the simple experience of living it. There are no preset strategies, no steps to memorize. Zen, like life, is something to be felt, to be reacted to in the moment. Logic, with its carefully constructed reasons, often struggles here, because true awareness doesn't unfold predictably. It rises from within and adapts to each situation as it comes. The son's father was wise in teaching through experience rather than words. In the chest, the boy's logical mind surrendered, and his intuitive mind finally had a voice. This shift from logic to intuition, from control to flow, is the essence of Zen. True awareness means trusting the moment and allowing intuition to guide. Like the boy in the story, we all encounter locked chests in life. When logic fails, intuition may be the only way out. Each moment offers an opportunity to let go of structured thinking and lean into pure awareness, responding to life not with prepared answers, but with the fluidity and openness of the intuitive mind. This is the heart of Zen, an art of awareness that defies rigid structure and embraces the unknown. It's not something that can be taught through words or instructions. Like burglary, it's learned in the doing, in moments of crisis when the logical mind falls silent, and intuition, the feminine receptive force within us, steps forward. Zen is not found through questions and answers. It is felt in moments of spontaneous action, in the heartbeat of now. A beautiful way to understand this concept is through the metaphor of water. Water is one of the most feminine elements in nature, fluid, ever-flowing, adaptable. When we think of the flow of water, we realize that it doesn't force its way through obstacles. Instead, it finds a way around them. The feminine way of functioning is like this. It doesn't try to push its way through or impose its will. Instead, it flows, adapting to whatever the situation demands. This fluidity allows it to move gracefully through life, embracing change and unpredictability with ease. One of the most profound stories that illustrate the power of functioning from the feminine comes from the experience of a woman named Maya, a successful entrepreneur who had built a thriving business over the years. She was known for her sharp mind, strong decisions, and the relentless pursuit of goals. But despite her outward success, she often felt something was missing. Her business was growing, but so was her sense of overwhelm. She had come to a point where her constant striving was draining her energy and leaving her disconnected from her creativity and passion. One day, Maya attended a workshop where the speaker talked about the power of feminine energy, about moving from doing to being, from force to flow. The speaker invited the group to experience a quiet meditation where they were to sit and simply allow thoughts and ideas to come without pushing or trying to control them. Maya, initially skeptical, decided to give it a try. She closed her eyes, let go of the pressure to figure it all out, and allowed herself to simply be in the moment. In the stillness, something incredible happened. For the first time in months, Maya felt a profound sense of peace. She realized that her need to control everything had been keeping her from accessing the very creative potential she had been striving to unlock. Her business decisions had been made from a place of fear and stress, rather than from intuition or inspiration. That afternoon she had an epiphany. Instead of constantly pushing herself to work harder, she needed to step back and trust her inner wisdom to guide her. The more she embraced this feminine approach, the more she found that her intuition began to speak louder. Her creativity flowed freely, and her business became more successful, not through force, but through alignment. What Maya discovered was that functioning from the feminine isn't about retreating or being passive. It's about cultivating a balance between the feminine energies of receptivity and the masculine energies of action. Maya realized that her intuition was a guide, and if she allowed herself to trust it, she would make decisions that were not only aligned with her values, but would also move her closer to her goals. This meant becoming comfortable with uncertainty, embracing the unknown, and allowing her inner knowing to take the lead. This process of surrender and trust can be challenging. Our culture often emphasizes achievement and control, which makes it hard to trust the feminine way of being. But when we learn to step back and observe rather than act immediately, we allow our intuition the space it needs to rise to the surface. In essence, we begin to function from a place of deep inner trust, knowing that the answers will come, not through force, but through allowing. The beauty of the feminine way of functioning is that it is creative. Creativity doesn't always come from structured planning and forced productivity. It often emerges in the spaces between doing, in the quiet moments when we let go of expectations and simply allow. This creativity flows from a state of inner peace and stillness, where new ideas and solutions are birthed. By embracing the feminine, we allow our creativity to take shape without the constraints of rigid expectations. We open the door to innovation and possibility, free from judgment or perfectionism. One of the most important aspects of functioning from the feminine is learning to trust the process. Unlike the linear approach of the masculine, which tends to focus on outcomes and end goals, the feminine emphasizes the journey. It invites us to experience life fully in the present moment, rather than constantly striving for something in the future. Trusting the process means that we are okay with uncertainty. We are comfortable with not knowing exactly what will unfold. We trust that as long as we are aligned with our intuition, the right opportunities, ideas, and people will show up in divine timing. This approach requires a shift in mindset, moving away from urgency and the need for immediate results to patience and faith. The feminine calls us to cultivate a relationship with time that isn't rooted in stress or rushing, but in the understanding that everything unfolds in its own time. When we function from the feminine, we surrender to the rhythm of life, trusting that what is meant for us will come in perfect timing. Another aspect of functioning from the feminine is self-compassion. It requires us to be gentle with ourselves, to honor our energy, and to recognize that we don't have to constantly be doing to be valuable or productive. The feminine invites us to rest, to recharge, and to nourish ourselves, knowing that our worth is not tied to how much we can accomplish. This deep compassion for ourselves creates a foundation of safety and trust from which intuition can flourish. The ultimate gift of functioning from the feminine is that it connects us to our deepest wisdom, that part of ourselves that knows what is best for us at any given moment. When we function from this place, we no longer feel the need to seek answers outside of ourselves. Instead, we trust that everything we need is already within us. This connection to our inner knowing creates a life that is authentic, aligned, and in harmony with our true purpose. To function from the feminine is to move from the mind to the heart, from thinking to feeling. This brings us to the next essential strategy, learning to shift from intellectual analysis to the realm of feeling and intuition. Third strategy, move from thinking to feeling. Intellect and intelligence are often used interchangeably. but they are profoundly different in nature. The intellect is rigid, logical, and rational. It is based on structures and patterns learned from external sources. Intelligence, on the other hand, is innate, expansive, and more intuitive. It transcends logic and reason. While intellect relies on facts, analysis, and predefined systems, intelligence operates in a space that is often unpredictable, unexplainable, and deeply connected to our inner being. In this sense, intellect is borrowed, while intelligence is our own. It is intrinsic to who we are. A person who solely relies on intellect will often struggle with ambiguity, because intellect needs clarity and structure. However, the mind eventually reaches a point where logical reasoning cannot provide answers or solutions. Even the most brilliant scientists, after years of research and intellectual pursuit, encounter moments when logic fails. It is in these moments of confusion and uncertainty that they rely on their intuition, on those inexplicable flashes of insight that seem to come from nowhere. These moments of insight are often described as hunches or gut feelings, but in truth, they are simply the higher intelligence within us responding to the unknown. When we have done the work of the intellect and have learned to trust our deeper faculties, the wisdom that arises feels like a ray of light breaking through the darkness. It comes from within us, yet seems to transcend our conscious understanding. In the ancient Sanskrit language, the word sadomati beautifully expresses this quality of higher intelligence. The word mati means intelligence, and sadhu refers to a sage or wise person. Together, they represent not just ordinary intelligence, but a deeper, more sagely wisdom, one that integrates reason with a sense of inner knowing. This is the kind of intelligence that allows a person to navigate the complexities of life, not just through logic, but through a kind of grace and understanding that comes from within. Rationality is limited to the mind, but sagely intelligence connects us to the heart and the soul. A truly reasonable person understands that not everything can be explained logically, and in accepting the irrational, they embrace a fuller understanding of the world. Yet, despite the limitations of intellect, many people continue to value it above all else. They argue, analyze, and seek to prove everything with facts and reason, even when certain truths are self-evident, yet unprovable. Take love, for example. Nobody has ever successfully defined or proven love in a purely intellectual sense. And yet love exists. We all know it. We feel it, even if we cannot put it into words. This is the paradox of life. That which cannot be proven is often the most real and profound experience we have. The intellect can never satisfy the heart. No matter how much knowledge we accumulate, we are never truly fulfilled until we learn to connect with our emotions and feelings. These are the two poles of human experience, the head and the heart. When we are born, we come with a natural intelligence, an intuitive capacity to see and understand the world around us. However, this intelligence is often stifled by the education system, societal expectations, and cultural norms that value intellectual achievement over personal insight. Society teaches us to conform, to follow rules, and to fit into a mold. As a result, many children who are born with a pure, untainted intelligence are gradually conditioned to conform to the expectations and limitations of the outside world. We are told what to think, what to believe, and what to do. And in doing so, we lose touch with our natural wisdom. Intelligence becomes confused with memorization, rote learning, and the imitation of others. Rather than cultivating our own understanding, we are taught to repeat what others have said, to mimic what others have done. This process of intellectual conditioning can be likened to a school for animals, a story that beautifully illustrates the fallacy of trying to standardize intelligence. In this parable, the animals in a forest form a school and decide that all animals must learn a set of specific skills: running, flying, swimming, and climbing trees. While each animal excels in its own unique ability, they are all forced to study skills that are unnatural to them. The rabbit, who is a skilled runner, struggles with tree climbing and becomes progressively weaker in the process. The bird excels in flying but is clumsy at burrowing, and the fish has no capacity for climbing trees at all. Eventually, the eel, who can do nothing particularly well, becomes the valedictorian of the class, simply because he is the least challenged by the rigid curriculum. This absurdity is an apt metaphor for the current education system, which forces individuals to conform to a one-size-fits-all approach rather than nurturing their unique talents and gifts. By trying to make everyone the same, we diminish their potential. This story serves as a reminder of the consequences of standardization in education. Intelligence is not a one-size-fits-all concept. We each have our own innate abilities, and trying to fit everyone into the same mold only leads to frustration, confusion, and a sense of inadequacy. The true purpose of education should not be to force everyone into the same box, but to allow individuals to cultivate their own unique intelligence and strengths. Intelligence is not about copying others or trying to be like someone else. It is about discovering who you are, embracing your unique qualities, and using your natural gifts to navigate the world. The moment we start comparing ourselves to others, we diminish our sense of self-worth. We forget that we are individuals with our own unique perspectives, talents, and potential. The greatest tragedy in life is the belief that one is unintelligent, unworthy, or incapable. This belief is not a reflection of our true nature, but a result of external conditioning. No one is born unintelligent. We come from the same source as all of existence, which is pure intelligence. The problem arises when society imposes its limited and distorted views on us, teaching us to obey, conform, and suppress our natural wisdom. It is in this suppression that our intelligence becomes clouded and distorted. Our true selves are buried beneath layers of expectation, fear, and conformity. But this can be unlearned. We have the power to reclaim our natural intelligence by rejecting the conditioning and rediscovering who we truly are. To reclaim your true intelligence, you must be willing to rebel. Rebel against the expectations and limitations imposed on you by society. Rebellion in this context is not about fighting against others. It is about fighting against the forces that have distorted your sense of self. It is about dropping all that has been forced upon you and returning to a place of innocence and authenticity. You must unlearn what you have been taught and reconnect with your inner wisdom. When you do this, you will find that your true intelligence is not something foreign or external. It is already within you, waiting to be rediscovered. The heart is the center of true intelligence. The intellect is merely a tool that can serve the heart, but it should never rule over it. The moment we allow the head to dominate our lives, we lose touch with our true selves. We become trapped in a mechanical existence, moving through life without ever truly living. The heart is the source of creativity, love, and joy. It is the center of our being, and when we allow it to guide us, we experience life in all its fullness. Intelligence is not about accumulating knowledge. It is about living in harmony with who you truly are. It is about responding to life in the moment, without relying on pre-programmed answers or rigid plans. Only when we live from the heart, using the intellect as a servant, can we truly experience the richness of life. Intelligence is not something you can acquire through study or effort. It is something you must uncover by returning to your true nature. When you live from the heart, the intellect serves you, and you experience life in all its beauty, mystery, and surprise. Let go of the need to compare, to conform, and to follow. Reclaim your uniqueness, your innocence, and your true intelligence. Life is a celebration, and the heart is the key to experiencing its full glory. Imagine standing in a forest, trying to find your way. Thinking would lead you to analyze each possible path, calculating where each might lead. Feeling, on the other hand, would allow you to tune into the natural environment, sensing which path resonates with you, trusting your intuition to guide you. By practicing meditation, mindfulness, or simply quiet reflection, we can train ourselves to listen to our feelings rather than overthinking. This shift from mind to heart, from thinking to feeling, opens the door to intuitive insights, helping us navigate life with clarity and confidence. Shifting from thinking to feeling requires us to relax, to let go of control, and relaxation itself is a key component of accessing intuition, which leads us to the next principle. Fourth strategy, relax. Great advancements in science have not emerged from the intellect alone, but rather through moments of deep intuition. The most remarkable discoveries and breakthroughs in history, from Archimedes to Albert Einstein, have come not from painstaking logical analysis, but from sudden flashes of insight that seem to come from beyond the confines of the mind. Take the story of Archimedes, for instance. His famous eureka moment occurred not through intense intellectual effort, but while he was simply relaxing in a hot bath. For days, Archimedes had been troubled by a problem the king of his country posed to him. He wanted to know whether his crown was made of pure gold, or if it had been mixed with another material. Archimedes had tried all manner of methods to solve this puzzle without damaging the crown, but despite his tireless efforts, he could find no solution. And then, in the most relaxed of circumstances, while sinking into a full tub of warm water, an idea suddenly flashed into his mind. As the water overflowed from the tub when he entered, he realized that the volume of water displaced could be directly related to the density of the materials. If gold were placed in the same situation, the water displaced would provide the key to identifying the purity of the crown. The insight was immediate and ecstatic. Archimedes, overcome with excitement, ran through the streets shouting, "Eureka! Eureka!" completely forgetting his nakedness in his joy. This sudden realization came not from laborious reasoning, but from a moment of relaxation that allowed his mind to tap into a deeper well of understanding. It wasn't a logical deduction, it was a true insight, an intuitive knowing that emerged from beyond the ordinary thought processes. Albert Einstein, a man known for his own flashes of insight, was also a firm believer in the power of relaxation. He was known to spend hours in the bathtub, possibly inspired by Archimedes himself. Dr. Ram Manohar Lohia, an intellectual and political figure from India, once visited Einstein. Lohia recounted that upon arriving at Einstein's home, he was told to wait because Einstein was in the bathtub, and there was no telling when he would come out. After some time had passed, Lohia asked Einstein's wife what exactly Einstein did during these long bath sessions. She replied, laughing, that Einstein often played with soap bubbles. But there was a method to this seemingly playful activity. She explained that it was during these moments of idle contemplation, in the quiet solitude of the bath, that Einstein would often experience insights, those flashes of brilliance that had eluded him when working tirelessly at his desk. The relaxed, meditative state of the bath was where his greatest breakthroughs occurred. The reason the bathtub is such a fertile space for insight is simple. It provides a setting of deep relaxation. When you relax, you drop the tensions and stress of daily life. The warm water, the solitude, and the peaceful atmosphere of the bathroom create an environment in which the mind can let go. It is in this state of relaxation that the mind, free from the constraints of daily worries, can access a deeper level of creativity and insight. In fact, modern bathrooms have become increasingly designed for comfort and relaxation, almost like small temples, places where people can retreat to think, reflect, and perhaps even meditate. It is no wonder that many of history's greatest scientists have found their moments of insight in such places. A breakthrough is often not the result of strenuous effort, but of a peaceful, open mind. This phenomenon of insight arising from relaxation is not limited to just the famous minds of history. It is a universal experience. All the great scientific discoveries, whether in physics, chemistry, or biology, often emerge after periods of unconscious contemplation when the mind is allowed to rest. It's in these moments of silence and detachment that the mind can access intuitive knowledge. Scientific discovery, therefore, doesn't always arise from the deliberate processes of rational thought. It often comes from a deeper, more meditative place that transcends the conscious mind. When the mind is allowed to rest, it opens up to something far greater than itself. It is important to distinguish between the intellect and true insight. The intellect is a tool. It is part of the mind, and it operates within the confines of logic and reason. Insights, however, do not arise from the intellect. They come from the deeper layers of consciousness beyond the reach of the logical mind. No computer, no machine, no matter how advanced, can provide the kind of insight that arises from within a human being. The intellect can help us apply what we learn, but it cannot create new knowledge or breakthroughs. Insights are always gifts from the beyond, when the mind is at rest and is not controlling or limiting the process. This is why science and true religiousness come from the same source. They both require breakthroughs, insights, and intuitive understanding. When you are deeply engaged in meditation or moments of relaxation, you create space for the mind to quieten, allowing you to access deeper wisdom. That wisdom, whether in the form of a scientific discovery or a spiritual realization, is the same. It is a flash of knowing that transcends the mind. On the other hand, when technology is created, it is the result of the mind working with existing knowledge and applying it in practical ways. Technology is not a breakthrough of insight. It is the implementation of insight. It is born out of the mind's mechanical processes. This is also true of religious technology, like yoga, mantras, and rituals. These are mental constructs designed to help a person achieve a certain state or purpose. Yoga, for example, is not tied to any specific religion. It is a technique, a method, created by the mind to help you connect with your deeper self. While useful, yoga is still a form of religious technology, just like the machines created by the mind to serve practical purposes. But the spiritual breakthrough, the insight that Buddha had while sitting under the Bodhi tree, was not born from the mind. It was an experience that transcended all the boundaries of the mind, ego, and body. It was something pure, untouched by the limitations of thought. When Buddha reached enlightenment, it was not through any mental process. It happened when his mind was completely still, and the beyond, something eternal, penetrated him. It is in these moments of pure silence and stillness that true insight arises. And while Buddha later spoke of his experience, the words he used were not the insight itself. They were just the mind's attempt to express what had happened in silence. This is why, after his enlightenment, Buddha remained silent for 7 days. He had no words to describe what he had experienced. The insight itself came from a place beyond the mind. When I share my knowledge with you, it comes through the mind, but my understanding is not of the mind. The mind is merely the vehicle for communication. The insight is beyond the mind. True insight and enlightenment arise from a deeper, more expansive space that transcends our intellectual processes. So when I say to relax and allow the mind to quieten, I am asking you to create the conditions for insights to arise, not through effort, but through relaxation, stillness, and the space that meditation provides. Imagine a lake with still, clear water. When the water is calm, it reflects everything around it perfectly. But when it's disturbed, the reflections become distorted. Our minds work the same way. In a relaxed state, our mind becomes clear, reflecting our intuition with precision. Practices like meditation, breathing exercises, and spending time in nature can help us cultivate relaxation. When we make relaxation a habit, we're more attuned to our inner guidance, able to navigate life with ease and flow. Once we're relaxed and receptive, we're ready to connect with an even deeper aspect of ourselves, our inner guide. This is where intuition truly takes root. Fifth strategy, find the inner guide. You have an inner guide within you, though you might not realize it. It's always there, but it has been so long since you've listened to it. So many lifetimes have passed that you may have forgotten its presence entirely. The first challenge in finding your inner guide is recognizing that it already exists within you. It is not something you need to go searching for in the outside world, for it has always been a part of your being, waiting to be awakened. Our minds are often clouded by noise, whether it's the opinions of others, societal pressures, or our own fears and doubts. To hear the inner guide clearly, you must first create the space for it to emerge. This requires quieting the mind and letting go of the need for constant external validation. Silence, solitude, and introspection are the fertile soil in which your inner guide can bloom. A crucial aspect of this process is learning to trust your intuition. Intuition is the language of the inner guide. It's that gut feeling, that instinctive sense of knowing without needing a logical explanation. It may appear as a feeling in your body, a sudden insight, or even an impulse to act without understanding why. Too often we ignore these intuitive nudges because they don't fit within the structured frameworks of reason. But true wisdom is not always logical, and it often defies conventional expectations. The more you listen to your intuition, the more you strengthen your connection to your inner guide. Over time, this connection will become clearer and more reliable. Finding your inner guide also means becoming aware of your inner landscape, the thoughts, emotions, and beliefs that shape your perception of the world. Often, these internal patterns are influenced by past experiences, fears, and conditioned responses. The inner guide, however, is free from these distortions. It speaks from a place of clarity, truth, and love. To truly hear it, you must learn to distinguish between the voice of your true self and the noise of your fears, doubts, and societal conditioning. This requires self-awareness and an ongoing practice of mindfulness. There is also an element of surrender in this process. To truly follow your inner guide, you must let go of the need to control every aspect of your life. The inner guide often leads you to paths that are unexpected or outside your comfort zone. This requires faith in yourself, faith in the wisdom within you, and faith in the divine intelligence that guides the flow of life. When you surrender to this wisdom, you are no longer trying to force life to fit your desires. Instead, you are allowing life to unfold naturally, trusting that each step you take will bring you closer to your true purpose. But finding the inner guide is not a one-time event. It is an ongoing process of deepening your awareness and continuously learning to trust yourself. Life will present you with challenges, and at times, it may feel difficult to follow your inner voice, especially when external circumstances are loud and demanding. However, the more you practice listening to your inner guide, the more confident and clear you will become in discerning its direction. The key is consistency and patience. When you begin to follow your inner guide, you will notice a shift in how you approach life. Decisions become easier, and life begins to feel more aligned with your true self. The fear of failure diminishes because you realize that the journey itself, the process of following your inner guide, is more important than any external outcome. Even when things don't go as planned, you will have the inner strength to navigate through challenges with grace and resilience. Ultimately, the inner guide is about connection to your deepest self, to the truth of who you are, and to the flow of life itself. When you align with this guide, you move through life with a sense of purpose, joy, and fulfillment. It's not about striving for success as the world defines it, but about living authentically, in harmony with your inner truth. This is the path to true freedom, the freedom to be who you are, without fear or hesitation. I remember reading about the teachings of Don Juan, a master who guided Carlos Castaneda in profound ways. One of the exercises he gave Castaneda was a test of trust in the inner guide. It was an ancient practice. On a pitch-dark night, on a treacherous, hilly path with no light to see, Don Juan told Castaneda, "Just believe in your inner guide and start running." The terrain was dangerous, full of trees, steep inclines, and unseen obstacles. Castaneda was terrified. The thought of running in such a place felt suicidal. But Don Juan wasn't afraid. He ran, swiftly and confidently, as if he could see through the darkness. Each time he came back to Castaneda unscathed. Castaneda was astonished. How could he do this? How could he run in a place so treacherous and find his way back every time? Eventually, Castaneda found the courage to follow his master's example. As he ran, he felt something shift within him, a subtle guiding force, a light that guided him even in the darkest moments. Slowly, he began to trust that inner light. The truth is, you are at your most authentic when you stop thinking. The moment you let go of the constant chatter in your mind, your inner guide takes over. The mind is often a hindrance, trying to reason and analyze everything. It is through the mind that you miss opportunities, because it takes time to calculate and deliberate, while life waits for no one. This is why Zen masters often use swordsmanship as a meditation practice. They train their students to act without thought. When two masters face off, there's no time to think about moves, no time for strategies. Their swords don't belong to their minds, they belong to the inner guide, which moves with precision and clarity. There's no gap between action and reaction. In that moment, they are one with the guide, and the sword moves as an extension of their being. The mind doesn't interfere, it cannot. If it did, there would be no time to act. You have to stop thinking so much. Your mind is conditioned to overthink. We're taught to analyze everything, but the truth is, the inner guide moves through us naturally when we trust it. It comes from deep within, from the core of your being. When you think, it is confined to the head, based on what you already know. But when your inner guide speaks, it comes from below, from the navel upward. There's a flow, a warmth that rises. It is a spontaneous knowing that doesn't require reasoning or proof. It simply is. Try it in real-life situations. For example, imagine you're lost in a forest. If you start thinking about how to find your way, you'll only add confusion and fear. Instead, close your eyes. Relax. Let go of the need to figure it out. When your mind quiets, when you stop thinking, the inner guide will surface. You'll feel a pull. Let your body move without interference from the mind. Trust your intuition, and soon you will find the path. Many great discoveries throughout history have happened this way. Scientists and innovators have often described how their greatest breakthroughs came to them not through intellectual labor, but in moments of non-thinking. Marie Curie, for example, came to some of her greatest insights, not through endless calculation, but by letting go and allowing her mind to rest. She would sleep on problems, trusting that answers would come in their own time. The truth is, science itself is driven by intuition. Modern scientists now agree that many of the greatest discoveries came not from reason, but from the inner guide. This inner guide is there for all of us, yet it is often hidden beneath layers of intellectual thought. The role of the external teacher or guru is not to provide answers, but to help you reconnect with your own inner guide. Once you awaken to it, the need for an external guide fades. You can trust your own intuition to lead you because it is always available, always reliable. The inner guide is not limited to humans. It exists in all beings, in animals, trees, and even in nature's phenomena. For example, fish that are born without ever meeting their parents instinctively know where to go when it is time to lay eggs, despite having no knowledge of where they came from. They are guided by an unseen force, an inner knowing. Experiments with animals have shown the profound connection to this inner guide. A mother cat, separated from her kittens, would still feel when one of her kittens was in danger, even from a great distance. Her heartbeat would change as if she felt the pain. Scientists have concluded that animals too have an inner guide, a telepathic connection to their loved ones. As a human, you have this same connection, but it is often buried under layers of intellect and reasoning. When you face a problem, don't think. Just stop. Let go of your mental chatter, trust the inner guide, and see how the solution appears. It might feel uncomfortable at first, but with time, you will grow to trust it. You will find that it always leads you where you need to go. Wisdom comes from the heart, not the intellect. True wisdom arises from the depth of your being. When you let go of the head, when you stop reasoning, you begin to follow the guidance that is always present within you. Trust it, follow it, and you will find your way, even through the most difficult challenges. The path is clear if you only listen. Finding your inner guide is a deeply transformative experience, and it is the foundation for living a life of meaning and joy. It takes practice, patience, and courage to cultivate this relationship, but the rewards are immeasurable. When you find your inner guide, you find yourself, and in that discovery, you find a life that is truly worth living. Having discovered the power of the inner guide, it's time to understand that true success lies not in external achievements, but in inner happiness. Intuition leads you to bliss, regardless of worldly recognition. In the next section, we'll explore how to make happiness your ultimate criterion for success. Sixth strategy: make happiness the criterion. Does a person who lives through intuition always succeed? The answer is no, but they are always happy, regardless of whether they succeed or not. On the other hand, someone who does not live intuitively will always be unhappy, no matter their success. Success is not the ultimate measure of life because success depends on many external factors. Happiness, however, is within your control and depends only on you. You might not always succeed, especially when others are involved, such as competitors who may be more cunning, clever, calculating, or immoral. Success is a social phenomenon influenced by external circumstances, not just individual effort. There are many things beyond your control, and even when you work intuitively, you may still find yourself at odds with others who employ other tactics to reach their goals. Take, for example, Jesus. Can we truly say that he succeeded? His crucifixion is often seen as the ultimate failure. At just 33 years old, he was crucified, with no widespread recognition or fame. He had no political power, no prestige, and just a handful of humble followers. By worldly standards, this does not look like success. Yet despite being crucified, he was blissful, filled with happiness in the face of unimaginable pain. The question arises, who was truly undergoing crucifixion? Was it Jesus, who endured the physical torment, or those who were responsible for crucifying him? Jesus was happy, and you cannot crucify happiness. You cannot kill the ecstasy of the soul. The body may be tortured and killed, but the spirit remains invincible. The people who crucified Jesus lived on, but their lives were long, drawn-out crucifixions of misery. So what I am trying to convey is this. Following the inner guide of intuition may not always lead to success in the way the world defines it. Success in the worldly sense is measured by external achievements such as fame, power, or wealth. But success in the eyes of someone like Buddha or Jesus is measured by happiness, by bliss. No matter what happens externally, whether the world labels you a failure or a success, you will remain blissful if you live by your inner guide. Bliss is success. If you can grasp that true success lies in happiness, then you will succeed, always. For many people, however, success is defined differently. To them, success is not happiness but ego fulfillment. They may even be willing to sacrifice their happiness to achieve success, and they are often prepared to endure misery if it means they will be recognized as successful. But this kind of success is an illusion. It is a hollow form of recognition that comes at the cost of losing one's soul, one's innocence, and the peace that leads to spiritual fulfillment. The world equates success with ego gratification, with achieving external goals, no matter the cost. But true success, for me, is being blissful, whether anyone notices or not. You could live an unknown life, unrecognized and unnoticed, and still have achieved the greatest success if you are blissful. Many people long for intuition, for the inner guide, with the hope of succeeding in the world. But those who seek the inner guide only for the sake of worldly success will find themselves frustrated. First, they may struggle to find it. Second, even if they do find it, they will be miserable because their true aim is not bliss but ego fulfillment and external recognition. So it's important to be clear about your intentions. Don't pursue success as the world defines it. Success, as the world sees it, is the greatest failure. If you chase success, you will inevitably be a failure. Instead, focus on being blissful in every moment. Whether the world calls you a failure or a success, you will not be defeated. You will have attained the highest success, inner happiness and peace. Take Buddha as an example. In the eyes of his family, his friends, his teachers, and society, he was a failure. He had been born a prince with all the qualities and potential to be a great emperor, yet he chose to become a beggar. To all outward appearances, he was a failure, but I would argue that he was not a failure. Had he become an emperor, he would have missed the real treasure of life. What he attained under the Bodhi tree, the inner awakening, was the real success, and what he gave up, the illusion of worldly power, was the false success. The real success is an inner one. If you pursue the unreal, the external achievements that the world prizes, then you are on the wrong path. Success in the worldly sense, driven by competition, cunning, jealousy, and violence, may lead to external recognition, but you will lose your true self along the way. Jesus asked, "What does it profit a man to gain the whole world, yet lose his soul?" Would you call Alexander the Great a success, or would you call Jesus, the crucified, a success? So, if you are truly interested in worldly success, the inner guide may not be the path for you. The inner guide speaks to those who seek to know themselves, to explore the inner dimension of being, and to find happiness within. If you are focused on achieving external success, then following the inner guide will not be your priority. But in the end, even if you gain everything the world has to offer, you may find that you have lost yourself. The world might call you a success, but you will know the deep emptiness that comes from sacrificing your true self for external validation. On the other hand, if you listen to the inner guide, you will discover that true success is not measured by what the world thinks of you, but by the joy, peace, and bliss you experience within yourself. In conclusion, remember that if you want to succeed in the world, you may have to abandon the inner guide. But if you are truly seeking the success of the soul, if you are seeking happiness, then only the inner guide can help you. Having understood that true success is rooted in inner peace and happiness, it's time to focus on the most vital aspect of living intuitively. This next step is the key to unlocking the full potential of your inner guide, and it's crucial that you pay close attention. For it is here, in the art of living with intuition, that you will discover the most profound and transformative power. So let's move forward with the most essential strategy. Go for the poetry of life, where everything becomes an expression of your true self. Seventh strategy. Go for the poetry. Many things cannot be adequately expressed in Western languages because the Eastern approach toward reality is fundamentally different. At a surface level, both Eastern and Western perspectives may appear similar, but when you dive deeper, you discover a stark contrast. These differences are not just subtle, they are extraordinary in their depth. When looking at a particular experience, Eastern and Western interpretations can diverge in ways that reveal the essence of two completely different ways of being and perceiving. Take, for example, a famous haiku by Basho, the Zen master, which may not seem remarkable to a Western reader or one educated in a Western way of thinking. The whole world, it seems, is being educated in the Western manner, and East and West have blurred together in terms of formal education. But there is something about Basho's poetry that transcends intellectual understanding. His haiku speaks to the heart, to the intuition, and only those who can read beyond the surface with a subtle and open awareness will truly grasp its significance. Let us take a moment to listen to Basho's haiku. When I look carefully, I see the Nazunia blooming by the hedge. At first glance, this might seem like an ordinary observation. What is so profound about a common flower blooming by the side of the road? However, to understand the true beauty of this poem, one must approach it with a sympathetic heart and an intuitive mind, not through intellectual analysis. Basho's words capture an insight that transcends what the Western mind considers great poetry. In his own language, this haiku carries a texture, a fragrance, that gets lost in translation. The Nazunia is a simple, unremarkable flower. It's not a prized lotus or a vibrant rose that attracts attention. It's a grass flower that grows by the roadside, unnoticed by most people. Its beauty doesn't demand admiration, and it doesn't boast of its worth. A rare lotus floating on a serene lake or a rose in full bloom might catch anyone's eye. But the Nazunia requires a different kind of attention, one that is soft, tender, and meditative. In order to see the beauty of the Nazunia, you need a delicate, mindful consciousness. It doesn't shout out for recognition. It's easy to pass by without noticing it. And yet, in its simplicity, there is something deeply profound. The ordinary, Basho reveals, holds within it the extraordinary. To appreciate this flower, you must look beyond its apparent lack of beauty and connect with it on a deeper, more intuitive level. This kind of perception is a skill cultivated through meditation, awareness, and love. The Nazunia's beauty lies in its ordinariness, and it is precisely this that makes it extraordinary. When you first read Basho's haiku, you might wonder, what could be so significant about a flower blooming by the hedge? But Basho's perception is not just about seeing the flower itself, it's about the way he sees it. The beauty of the flower is in his perception, his insight, and his openness. It's not the flower that possesses him, but rather his heart that is touched by the beauty of the moment. In Basho's haiku, the final word, kana, is often translated as an exclamation point, but it means more than that. Kana conveys a sense of awe, a state of being astonished, as if Basho is struck by the profound beauty of the moment. The beauty of the Nazunia is not in the flower itself, but in how Basho experiences it. His insight, his open heart, and his meditative consciousness transform a simple flower into something sacred and extraordinary. To truly understand this haiku, one must go beyond intellectual comprehension. The word carefully in Basho's poem is key. It doesn't just mean looking at the flower attentively, it means looking at it meditatively, with a deep, mindful awareness. This kind of attention is more than just visual. It involves a letting go of all thoughts, a clearing of the mind, and a deep immersion in the present moment. Basho's perception is not clouded by desires or memories, by analysis or judgment. It is a pure, empty state of being, where everything is seen with fresh eyes, untouched by the past or future. This kind of vision is what is known as no mind. When you look at the world from a state of no mind, everything becomes imbued with a special quality. Even the most ordinary things, like a simple flower, can seem miraculous. This is the way of a Buddha, to find the extraordinary in the ordinary, to perceive the divine in the present moment. Basho's haiku is an expression of this profound awareness, known in Buddhism as tathata, or suchness. It is a recognition that everything, no matter how simple, is infused with a sacred presence that can only be seen when one is truly present. To see something meditatively is to see it without the mind intervening. It's a state where the mind's chatter and judgments cease, and in that moment of silence, the world reveals its hidden beauty. The Nizunya, in all its ordinariness, becomes a symbol of the divine, of the miraculous, of the infinite. It's a reminder that the extraordinary is always present in the mundane, waiting to be recognized. This contrasts with how the Western mind typically operates. The Western approach often involves analysis, categorization, and possession. In Western poetry, like Tennyson's, nature is something to be understood and controlled. Tennyson's famous poem, Flower in the Crannied Wall, is a great example of this intellectual approach. Tennyson speaks of plucking a flower from the wall, studying it, and seeking to understand its essence. However, this desire to understand can destroy the very beauty that makes something worthy of admiration. When you pluck a flower from its natural environment, you sever it from its life force. You possess it, but in doing so, you destroy its spontaneity, its natural grace. Basho, on the other hand, does not seek to possess or control the flower. He simply observes it in its natural state, with a loving, caring attention. His vision is not violent or controlling, but soft and receptive. Tennyson's poem is active. He plucks the flower, holds it in his hand, and tries to understand it. His mind is involved in dissecting the flower's meaning, its significance. Basho, however, is passive in his awareness. He simply looks. He does not grasp or seek to understand. He simply experiences, letting the moment be as it is, allowing the flower to reveal its beauty to him. This difference reflects the broader distinction between the Eastern and Western approaches to life. The Western mind is analytical and often seeks to control, possess, and understand. The Eastern mind, particularly in meditation, is receptive and passive, open to experiencing life as it is, without the need for intellectual explanation. Basho's haiku exemplifies this passive awareness, where the flower is not something to be possessed, but something to be experienced in its pure, untainted beauty. In this way, Basho's poetry reveals a deep truth about the nature of beauty and the spiritual life. True beauty does not come from intellectual understanding or possession. It comes from the ability to experience the world with an open heart, free from the constraints of the mind. When we let go of the need to control or understand, we open ourselves to the beauty that is all around us, waiting to be seen with fresh eyes. Basho's haiku invites us to cultivate this kind of awareness, to look carefully, to look meditatively, and in doing so, to discover the extraordinary in the most ordinary moments of life. What Basho is teaching us is not just a method of seeing, it is a way of being in the world. His haiku does not ask us to understand the flower, but to live with it, to sit with it, to allow it to be. It is an invitation to soften the sharp, analytical edges of the mind and embrace a more open, relaxed approach to life. When we look at the world through this lens, we no longer feel the need to make everything conform to our expectations or definitions. We begin to let go of the constant need to categorize and label, and we open ourselves to experiencing life as it truly is, unfolding, spontaneous, and ever-changing. The act of observing with a still mind, as Basho does in his haiku, brings us closer to the nature of reality. This is why Zen Buddhism speaks of beginner's mind, where we approach the world with the fresh innocence of someone encountering it for the first time. In this state, every moment is alive with possibility, and everything, even the most ordinary flower, contains the potential for enlightenment. The flower, the tree, the cloud, the breeze, they are all expressions of the same universal truth, waiting for us to recognize them. It is important to understand that this kind of seeing, this meditative observation, does not require any special ability or training. It simply requires presence. Presence is not something that can be cultivated through effort or willpower. It arises naturally when we stop trying to force the world into our pre-existing frameworks and allow it to simply be. When we are present, life speaks to us in its own language, not the language of concepts and definitions, but the language of feeling, of intuition, and of direct experience. Basho's haiku teaches us that the world is full of beauty, not just in the grand and spectacular, but in the subtle, the quiet, and the overlooked. The Nazunia does not compete for attention or acclaim, and yet, when seen through the eyes of a poet like Basho, it becomes a thing of incomparable beauty. This is the power of presence, of being in the moment without distraction or judgment. When we are fully present, we see the world not as it is, but as it could be, full of meaning, full of wonder, full of life. The next time you encounter a flower, a tree, or even a stone, pause and see it through Basho's eyes. Don't try to understand it. Simply observe it with full awareness. See it not as an object to be analyzed, but as a living presence in the world. You may discover, as Basho did, that even the most ordinary things are extraordinary when viewed with a meditative, open heart. As we wrap up this video, I want to leave you with a thought. Your inner guide is always there, waiting to show you the path to true happiness. It's not about success in the world's eyes. It's about aligning with your authentic self and finding peace, joy, and fulfillment, no matter where you are or what you're doing. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What part of this video resonated with you the most? How do you plan to use this knowledge to make positive changes in your life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I can't wait to hear from you. If you found this video valuable, be sure to share it with someone who could benefit from these insights. And remember, for more videos on personal growth, happiness, and mindfulness, MindFlex Audiobooks is here for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.